The full story of the ancient Sith didn't start with conquest, it started with survival. For 6,000 years, they would become the most powerful dark-side civilization the galaxy had ever seen. They conquered worlds, commanded armies of sorcerers, and brought the Republic to its knees in wars that consumed billions of lives. They were the greatest threat the Jedi ever faced. But despite all their strength, they never ruled the galaxy. Every time they stood on the edge of total victory, they destroyed themselves from within. Master against apprentice, and apprentice against master. Entire empires collapsed because one Sith Lord couldn't share power with another. Their greatest enemy wasn't the Jedi or the Republic, it was themselves. This wasn't always their way. Long before they became an order of dark-side users, long before the rule of two and the Empire, the Sith were something completely different. From King Adas, the God King who united them, through the Great Hyperspace War that nearly destroyed the Republic, to Dark Lords like Freedon Nadd and Exar Kun, all the way to Darth Bane, the man who destroyed his own order to save it. I have gathered all of the legend sources to tell their story, and it all begins on a brutal desert world that would become a graveyard for civilizations. The Sith we know today came from a species with the same name. Long before the Sith Lords rose to power, this red-skinned species lived on the desert world of Coraban. They were naturally strong in the dark side of the Force, and survived by turning their harsh world into a place of power. These original Sith built a civilization that would leave a mark on the galaxy for thousands of years. The Sith species evolved on Coraban around 100,000 BBY. Their environment shaped them over countless generations. This planet circled the red star Horusek in the far-off Outer Rim, isolated from most other civilizations. This isolation meant the Sith had to develop completely on their own, without any outside help or influence. Coraban's conditions were brutal. The world was dry, dusty, and cold. Water was hard to find, forcing people to come up with clever ways to save it. Valuable minerals were buried deep in the mountains and canyon systems, but digging them out was dangerous. Cave-ins and shaky ground killed people regularly. However, Coraban held something far more valuable than minerals. At the heart of Sith civilization stood the Valley of the Dark Lords, a place filled with powerful dark-side energy. The Sith evolved under the influence of this energy, developing a deep connection with the dark side itself. What made the Sith truly special was that almost every single member of their species could use the Force. Not just a few individuals, but basically everyone. In the Book of Sith, the Sith species was driven by hunger, rage, and the dark side itself. Their connection to the Force went beyond what other species experienced. Some sources suggest they could even draw sustenance directly from dark side energy. Whether literal or symbolic, this deep bond gave them advantages in survival, combat, and dark side techniques that other beings needed years of training to achieve. This connection manifested early in life. Sith children often developed Force awareness before they could walk or speak, weaving the Force into the fabric of daily existence. The dark side wasn't just something they learned, it was part of their biology, passed down through their bloodlines from one generation to the next. However, their natural Force sensitivity also made them targets. The planet's wildlife made daily life even more dangerous. The most well-known creatures were the Tukata, massive dog-like predators changed through alchemy to guard Sith tombs. Even more dangerous were the Terentatek, creatures created through Sith alchemy and designed to hunt Force users. The Terentateks fed on Force-rich blood, which meant they hunted Sith purebloods exclusively. The constant danger from these beasts meant everyone had to stay alert and be good at fighting. Beyond their Force abilities, the Sith species developed features that made them distinct from other humanoids across the galaxy. They had skin tones ranging from deep crimson to obsidian, with some individuals showing lighter red or pink hues. Their tough hides and physical build set them apart immediately. Their hands and feet typically had 3 clawed digits, with 2 pointing forward and 1 back, though individual Sith showed considerable variation. These digits ended in sharp claws that added to their fearsome reputation. 2 thick, fleshy tendrils hung from their cheeks or jaws, while additional tendrils called cartilaginous eyebrow stalks protruded from their temples. They had small noses with broad nostrils, sharp teeth, and sometimes cranial horn-like bumps. Along with prominent bone ridges, these details gave Sith purebloods a striking and intimidating look. Many also displayed glowing yellow eyes, a natural characteristic of their species. These biological traits were reinforced by a rigid social structure. Sith society was highly organized by rank under a caste system. Roles and responsibilities were assigned by birth. These castes were sometimes called subspecies, though members of different castes could still interbreed and produce healthy offspring. This structure gave Sith civilization stability and order that lasted for generations. At the top stood the Kisai, the priest caste who served as both spiritual and government leaders. They were scholars of Sith magic and alchemy, just as ruthless as the warriors, but more intelligent and watchful. They relied on cunning and knowledge rather than brute force. The Kisai guided society through sorcery and tradition, preserving knowledge through oral teaching, texts, and later, holocrons. As bridges between the living and the dark side, they tended the tombs of the fallen Dark Lords and performed ancestor rituals. Beyond preserving the past, the Kisai also performed darker rituals that defined Sith culture. They conducted blood sacrifices to their gods and prepared blood soup, a ritual drink made from the blood of sacrificed beings. Below the Kisai ranked the Massassi, the warrior caste who specialized in combat and defense. Where the Kisai ruled through knowledge, the Massassi enforced that rule through strength. They were the largest and strongest of the Sith, feared as brutal warriors who formed the backbone of Sith armies. Massassi training began in childhood, ensuring martial traditions endured across generations. Supporting both the priestly Kisai and the warrior Massassi were the Zuguruk, the builders and engineers of Sith civilization. They were loyal workers responsible for architecture and technology, from the massive tombs of the valley to the starships that would eventually carry the Sith beyond Coraban. Their engineering used careful load distribution and structural reinforcement, allowing buildings to survive Coraban's brutal conditions. At the bottom of Sith society were the Gruthu, the slave caste. As revealed in the Book of Sith, the Gruthu were a mixed group of species forced into menial labor, mining, construction, farming, and household service. Mining was especially lethal, with cave-ins and toxic conditions claiming lives regularly. Construction offered slightly better conditions, though the work remained dangerous. Domestic service was safest, though it meant constant proximity to masters who could punish or kill at will. Despite this organized structure, early Sith society was split into many tribes and clans that constantly fought each other for power and land. Fighting wasn't something unusual for them, it was just how they lived. Each clan was led by powerful sorcerer chiefs who used dark side magic to control their people. This pattern would continue for tens of thousands of years. Then, a massive warrior with charcoal skin rose to power. Around 28,000 BBY, a Sith named Adas emerged on Coraban. From youth, his unusual dark coloring was seen as an omen of greatness. He proved this prophecy true through superior force abilities, strategic brilliance, and ruthless determination. Adas defeated rival warlords and clan leaders, uniting the constantly warring Sith tribes under a single rule for the first time in their history. Wielding alchemically forged battle axes, he carved a path to absolute power. He earned the title Sithari, meaning the Lord or Overlord. This title carried spiritual meaning beyond political authority. The Sith came to believe Adas was not just their king, but their god, immortal and destined to rule forever. No Sith before him had commanded such respect or achieved such unity. Adas ruled for approximately 300 years, sustained by the dark side of the Force. This unprecedented stability allowed Sith civilization to flourish in ways never before possible. Internal conflicts decreased dramatically, while coordination between castes improved. Infrastructure projects connected isolated communities across Coraban, and knowledge could be organized and preserved rather than lost to endless warfare. Under his leadership, the Sith began recording their spoken traditions, compiling ritual techniques, and creating records that could survive individual deaths. The Sith developed their own language to preserve their teachings, writing in angular runes known as Kitat, or High Sith. These tomes contained Sith teachings, lore, and Force techniques in the species' ancient tongue. Then, within centuries of Adas's rise, around 27,700 BBY, visitors arrived from beyond the stars. The Rakatan Infinite Empire controlled vast galactic territories through advanced technology and Force-based domination. They had conquered countless worlds and enslaved numerous species. Now they turned their attention to Coraban. Initial contact seemed promising, but the Rakata had other plans. The Rakata presented themselves as teachers and allies. They offered to share advanced knowledge with the Sith, including the secret of creating holocrons. King Adas, intrigued by this technology, learned to record his own knowledge into a holocron, creating an artifact that would survive for millennia. However, Rakatan society was built on domination and exploitation. They viewed other species as naturally inferior, existing only to serve Rakatan interests. The Sith, despite their own rigid hierarchy, prized independence and strength. When the Rakata revealed their true intention to conquer and enslave the Sith people, war became inevitable. The conflict tested everything the Sith had built under Adas's rule. The Rakata possessed superior technology, advanced weapons, and resources drawn from across the galaxy. The Sith faced technological and resource disadvantages that would have crushed a lesser civilization. But the Sith had advantages of their own. They fought on their homeworld, surrounded by Coraban's dark side nexus, operating at peak Force effectiveness. Their intimate knowledge of the planet's terrain provided tactical benefits that offset technological inferiority. The caste system functioned as a coordinated military force, with Massassi warriors providing frontline combat power, while Kisai priests used Force abilities to counter Rakatan technologies. Zuguruk engineers worked to understand and adapt captured equipment. King Adas, nearly 3 centuries old but still powerful, led his people in battle. In the final decisive confrontation, he personally killed the Rakatan commander. This dealt a devastating morale blow that broke the Rakatan assault. In the end, the Sith won, but Adas fell in the final battle, sacrificing his life to secure his people's freedom. The Rakatan forces, leaderless and demoralized, retreated from Coraban. They left behind a devastated world. The long war had turned much of Coraban into a wasteland, its cities ruined and its resources depleted. Through this victory, the Sith required Rakatan technology that would prove transformative for their civilization. This advanced technology gave the Sith the means to travel outside of Coraban and establish a presence on other worlds. Adas's death created an immediate leadership crisis. No successor commanded the same respect or possessed his exceptional abilities. He had been worshipped as a god for 3 centuries. His death shattered the belief in his immortality and left a void that could not be filled. According to Tales of the Jedi, the Sith Empire once again plunged into civil war, as various warlords proclaimed themselves the new Sithari. Different factions backed different claimants. Each argued their candidate possessed the necessary leadership qualities to unite the Sith once more. But none could hold power and match Adas's strength or charisma. Adas would be remembered as the first and last king to truly unite all Sith under one rule. For nearly 24 millennia after his death, no single ruler would successfully bring the Sith species together again. The collapse of Sith unity following Adas's death was swift and devastating. With no established succession laws or universally accepted heirs, warlords across Coraban claimed the title of Sithari. The warrior culture that had defended against external enemies now turned inward. Regional power bases that Adas had united through conquest reasserted themselves. Different Sith lords controlled separate territories, each commanding their own Massassi warriors and Kisai priests. Yet, despite this political chaos, Sith civilization did not collapse entirely. Over the next 20,000 years, successive Sith lords used the Rakatan technology Adas had acquired to expand beyond their homeworld. They conquered worlds throughout what would become known as Sith space, establishing strongholds on planets both within and outside the Stygian caldera. The Sith species, once confined to Coraban, now controlled multiple star systems. This expansion, however, brought new divisions. Not all Siths accepted the direction their civilization was taking. Some Kisai priests could not reconcile Adas's death with their belief in his divine power. Unable to accept that their God King had fallen, these heretics were cast out. They settled on the distant world of Tund, where they practiced their own isolated form of Sith sorcery, becoming known as the Sorcerers of Tund. Meanwhile, other conquered worlds became centers of Sith power in their own right. The temples of Malsahor and Thul were fortified against any counterattack. Zeost, which had been important even during Adas's reign, became a major Sith stronghold. The Sith remained powerful, but divided, their empire more a collection of rival domains than a unified civilization. Prolonged warfare across multiple worlds wore down Sith capabilities over the millennia as skilled practitioners died before fully training successors. Rival domains refused to share innovations with their enemies, and knowledge that might have advanced their civilization was instead hoarded or lost in the endless conflicts. Among the warlords who rose during this dark age, none proved more destructive than Dathka Graush. Around 7000 BBY, Graush declared himself King of Coraban and unleashed some of the bloodiest civil wars in Sith history. His reign was marked by necromancy, sorcery that brought dead warriors back to life to serve again in battle. Facing their own dead raised against them broke the morale of Graush's enemies. His dominance came at a terrible cost. Cities and strongholds were ravaged, ancient tombs were defiled in his wars. Eventually, Graush was overthrown and entombed in the Valley of Golg, where his heart, an alchemically preserved crystal, remained a focus of dark power long after his death. The undead legions he raised collapsed with him, leaving Coraban scarred both physically and spiritually. The devastation he left behind weakened the Sith species beyond repair. By around 6900 BBY, when the Dark Jedi exiles arrived from the Old Republic, they found a civilization ready to fall. The Sith were divided among multiple worlds, but united by neither politics nor purpose. They retained their Force abilities, their combat skills, and their core cultural values. Individual communities still practiced the traditions of passion, strength, and power that had defined their species for millennia. But they had no Sithari, no unifying authority, and no coordinated defense against external threats. The conflict that led to the Dark Jedi's arrival began approximately a century earlier, around 7000 BBY. A group of Jedi discovered they could use the Force to transform living creatures into powerful servants and weapons. They believed the Force could be used to bend life itself to their will. This represented a major break from standard Jedi teachings, which did not allow such manipulation. When these Dark Jedi refused to stop their experiments, war broke out within the Jedi Order. The conflict lasted more than 100 years, destroying countless worlds. The Dark Jedi created monster beasts called Leviathans and other changed creatures to fight for them. But despite their power, they were eventually defeated. The final battle took place on the mining world of Korbos. There, the traditional Jedi crushed the Dark Jedi's remaining forces. Among the survivors was a former Jedi Master named Ajunta Paul, who had personally killed more than a dozen Jedi during the battle. But even his skills could not prevent their defeat. Rather than kill their defeated enemies, the winning Jedi chose exile. They took away all the Dark Jedi's weapons and loaded them onto a drone starship with no navigation equipment. The ship was programmed to carry them far beyond Republic space, to an unexplored region of the Outer Rim where they could never threaten the Jedi again. The drone ship drifted through hyperspace, guided only by the dark side of the Force. The exiles had no way to control where they went. They had no weapons to defend themselves. Many believed they would not survive. But after coming out of hyperspace, their ship eventually arrived at a world strong in the dark side. They had found Coraban. The Sith species greeted these strangers with suspicion and fear. Sensing the Dark Jedi's power, the Sith tried to drive them away using illusions and sorcery. Some of these displays were impressive, showing the natural force abilities the Sith had. The Sith were eager to protect their secrets and prove themselves against these intruders. But the Dark Jedi, though weaponless, were far more skilled in using the Force. Years of war had improved their abilities beyond what the Sith's tribal sorcerers could match. Even the most talented Sith could not stand against them. The Dark Jedi used the Force itself as their weapon, beating the Sith through better knowledge and training. Eventually, the Sith recognized the overwhelming power of these strangers, so they accepted defeat. What followed was not partnership, but conquest. The Dark Jedi took control of Sith society step by step. Ajunta Pall challenged and killed Coraban's ruling king, Hakagram Grouch. By taking the throne through combat, Pall made himself the new ruler and claimed the title Janari, meaning Dark Lord of the Sith. The conquered Sith, especially the Massassi warriors, lived only to serve their new masters. The Dark Jedi adapted the existing caste system to their needs, rather than destroying it. Warriors fit in with Massassi traditions. Those interested in alchemy found common ground with Kisai priests. The structures the Sith had built over thousands of years provided frameworks for bringing the newcomers into positions of power. Over time, what began as a conquest changed into something more complicated. The Dark Jedi recognized that the Sith had valuable knowledge of alchemy and darkside techniques unknown to the Jedi. The Sith, in turn, gained access to advanced Force training and a broader understanding of the galaxy. Marriage and children began between the Dark Jedi and native Sith. Over the following centuries, bloodlines mixed, creating hybrid descendants who combined human and Sith features. This biological fusion matched a cultural one. Sith traditions were organized and improved through contact with Dark Jedi knowledge. Spoken traditions were written down. Ritual practices were turned into teachable methods. The Massassi went through especially dramatic changes. Through Sith alchemy, the Dark Jedi exiles began transforming them into even more powerful and monstrous warriors. This process continued for centuries, with later Sith lords like Naga Sato pushing the changes even further. These changed Massassi became extremely loyal enforcers who would serve Sith lords for generations to come. As the hybrid civilization developed, Zeost became the new center of government. The planet's better environment allowed large-scale city building and industrial growth that devastated Coraban could not support. Coraban remained important as a sacred burial ground, but Zeost became the capital world, where Sith lords built their palaces and fortresses. The fusion of Dark Jedi and Sith created something new. Neither purely the species nor purely the exiled Jedi, this hybrid civilization combined the Force abilities of both groups. Over nearly 2,000 years, the hybridization continued. By the time of the Great Hyperspace War around 5000 BBY, almost all Sith had mixed heritage. Pureblood Sith had become increasingly rare. This hybridization marked a transformation in what Sith meant. The term expanded from referring to a species to describing an order of darkside users. The philosophical ideas that would eventually be formalized into the Sith Code began taking shape during this period, blending the passionate, strength-focused worldview of the original Sith with the Dark Jedi's rejection of Jedi limitations. Around 5000 BBY, the Sith Empire met its end in a war that scattered the species across the galaxy. What began as an accidental encounter between two civilizations exploded into the Great Hyperspace War, a conflict that would destroy the Sith Empire, drive the original species toward extinction, and plant seeds of darkness throughout the known galaxy. The war started with pure chance. Two Republic explorers, Gav and Jory Daragon, made a mistake with their hyperspace jump and accidentally arrived on Coraban. Their timing couldn't have been worse. They landed right in the middle of the funeral for Marka Ragnos, the half-blood Dark Lord who had ruled the Sith Empire for over a century. The gathered Sith Lords, already tense about who would rule next, were shocked to see strangers at their most sacred ceremony. For generations, the Sith had lived in isolation. They rarely had contact with anyone beyond their borders. Now, during a moment of weakness and change, strangers appeared carrying knowledge of a huge republic the Sith never knew existed. Many Sith Lords wanted to kill the explorers immediately. Ludo Kresh, leader of the traditional faction, argued that the explorers should die at once to keep their secrets safe. This hostile reaction showed how the Sith species viewed outsiders, not as potential partners, but as dangers that must be removed. Nagasato, however, saw an opportunity where others saw only risk. He orchestrated the explorers' escape and killed his rival Simus, staging the incidents to look like Republic attacks. This clever trick convinced most Sith that war was inevitable and that they needed strong leadership. The manipulation worked perfectly. Sato gained enough support to become Dark Lord, while Kresh was forced to flee in anger. Despite Sato's rise to power, the rivalry between him and Kresh didn't end. Kresh attacked Sato's forces on Kar Delba, but Sato had planned ahead. The fortress was just a decoy. Sato ambushed and destroyed Kresh's forces from a secret base on Kar Shian, the moon of Kar Delba. Believing Kresh was dead after this battle, Sato moved forward with his plan to invade the Republic. Sato gathered the Empire's fleets and Massassi armies for a massive invasion. Using hyperspace coordinates that Gav Daragon had provided, Sato launched attacks on multiple Republic systems at the same time. He used Sith magic to create huge illusions that made his forces look far more numerous than they really were. Sato stayed in his meditation sphere at the Primus Golud star, controlling the war through mental projection and illusions while his armies struck across Republic space. The Sith achieved shocking early victories. They surprised the Koros system and even attacked Coruscant itself, nearly overrunning the Republic capital. The Republic defenders struggled against what seemed like endless Sith forces and their strange weapons. On Coruscant, Sith landing forces led by Sith Lord Shar Dakan pushed all the way to the steps of the Senate Hall, where a last group of Jedi kept fighting against wave after wave of Sith attacks. However, the Sith faced serious problems that illusions couldn't hide. Their smaller population and limited industrial power meant they couldn't match the Republic's vast resources. While the Sith controlled dozens of worlds with millions or billions of people, the Republic had thousands of worlds with trillions. This huge difference in resources meant that even when the Sith won battles, the victories cost them more than they could afford to lose. The turning point came from an unexpected source: Gav Daragon's change of heart. Sato had made Gav a commander of his forces, but he felt fury after his friend Arba was killed. He flew back to Primus Golud and attacked Sato's meditation sphere, hoping to break the Dark Lord's focus and stop the magic he was using to control his armies. Just as Coruscant was about to fall to Sith forces, Sato's concentration broke. The illusions disappeared, showing that the Sith armies were actually much smaller than they appeared. The Republic forces, who had been on the edge of defeat, suddenly rallied. They launched a counterattack with what they had left of their military against the confused Sith, pushing them back into retreat. On the planet Kirek, the Massassi warriors kept fighting even after the illusions fell. Jedi Master Uru released poisonous cyanogen gas to kill the Sith in the area, sacrificing his own life, but the single-minded Massassi, in their rage, kept pushing forward anyway. When reinforcements from Ronica arrived to help the Kirek defenders, the Sith had to retreat. Following the collapse of Sato's illusions, Republic forces and reinforcements gained confidence. They pushed back the retreating Sith fleet all the way to Chorus Major. Jory Daragon, who had been there when Arba died, followed Gav from Chorus Major and called on Empress Tata's fleet for help. The Tatan forces and other Republic ships came out of hyperspace at Primus Golud to face Sato and what remained of his recalled forces. Sato had tricked Gav Daragon and trapped him on his damaged meditation sphere while Sato himself escaped to his Sith battleship. The Republic and Sith forces fought in space before Sato used his power to make the red supergiant star explode into a supernova. This killed Gav Daragon and many Republic ships, while Sato and his surviving forces jumped back to Sith space. When Sato returned to Sith space, he discovered that Ludo Kresh had survived his earlier defeat. Kresh had gathered his own forces, bringing together those Sith Lords who chose to stay behind. With their support, he took control and became the Dark Lord of the Sith Empire, while Sato was out trying to conquer the Republic. When Sato came back to Coraban to gather more Sith forces, Kresh revealed himself and told Sato that the title of Dark Lord had been taken away. The two Sith fleets fought in a battle driven by pride. Kresh's forces devastated Sato's already damaged ships. However, the battle ended when Sato ordered one of his doomed ships to crash into Kresh's flagship, killing the Dark Lord. The remains of Kresh's fleet held back, choosing not to keep fighting Sato's forces. Immediately after, Republic forces who had followed the Daragon Trail to Sith space came out of hyperspace near Sato's battered fleet. The Republic fleet crushed Sato's remaining ships, winning a decisive victory. After Sato refused Empress Tata's offer to surrender, he made a barrier with his remaining ships and headed for the Denari binary stars. He then used the Force and the remaining power on his ship to cause both stars to explode into supernovas, escaping while destroying his Republic pursuers in the process. At this point, the Empire no longer threatened the Republic, but Supreme Chancellor Pultimo wasn't satisfied. He ordered an invasion of Sith space to wipe out Sith civilization completely and make sure the Sith never returned. The Republic's and Jedi's mission was to leave no remnants of the Sith Empire. Hundreds of Republic warships invaded the Stygian caldera to attack the confused Empire, which was still in chaos after the death of their leader, Ludo Kresh. The Jedi Order also invaded with their Jedi shadows, looking to destroy everything they found about Sith teachings and ways. Together, the Jedi and Republic destroyed Sith Lords, their artifacts, talismans, and strongholds, eventually forcing the Sith to the point of surrender. During this period, Jedi Master Odan Ur employed a rare and powerful technique against certain Sith. Known as Sever Force, it severed individual Sith of their connection to the dark side. This technique was used sparingly, reserved for specific enemies rather than as a battlefield tactic. Shar Dakan, now the acting Dark Lord with both Kresh and Sato gone, had his Massassi warriors crash into the invading fleets in death charges as a last desperate option. The heavy casualties these tactics caused forced the Republic into a temporary retreat. Eventually, though, the Sith were driven to defeat. Many lower-class Sith claimed their own lives in rituals rather than be captured. Within a few years, the Empire fell apart completely. The Sith worlds were absorbed into the Republic. At the end of the Great Hyperspace War, most people widely believed that the Sith were extinct as both a religion and a species. Despite the thorough destruction, scattered groups of Sith managed to survive in three major groups. The first and most important group fled deep into unknown space. At least a few hundred Sith, along with tens of thousands of prisoners from their early victories, used random hyperspace coordinates in desperation to escape the Jedi and Republic. For 20 years, this fleet drifted through deep space, making random jumps and sending out blind scouting missions. Their leader was a Sith named Tenebrae, later known as Vitiate. Born in 5113 BBY on the remote world of Medrias, he was the illegitimate son of Lord Drameth, a Sith ruler. He showed terrifying force abilities from early childhood. His black eyes showed no emotion, and even animals avoided him. By age 6, he had killed his own father and enslaved his village, bending thousands to his will. He soon declared himself ruler of Medrias, renaming it Nathema. When the Great Hyperspace War ended in disaster around 5000 BBY, Tenebrae saw opportunity. He called the remaining Sith Lords to Nathema, promising power beyond imagination. Over 10 days, he performed a ritual that consumed the life force of 8,000 Sith and every living thing on the planet. Nathema became a void in the Force itself, lifeless, silent, stripped of all connection to the galaxy's energy. The ritual transformed Tenebrae, giving him near immortality. Taking the name Vitiate, he declared himself Sith Emperor. During their 25-year journey, the fleet encountered the Chiss Ascendancy. Unlike other civilizations the Sith had conquered, the Chiss surprised them by looking for peaceful solutions. Chiss negotiators met with Imperial diplomats, and the Chiss became the first official allies of the exiled Empire. Eventually, the fleet found the long-forgotten Sith world of Dromund Kaas. There, under Vitiate's immortal rule, the purebloods preserved their traditions and authority, even as their numbers slowly declined through mixed marriages. For over 1,000 years, generations devoted their lives to building massive armies and fleets, all serving the Emperor's dreams of revenge. The second survivor was the most notorious, Naga Sato himself. After causing the Denari Nova that made everyone think he died, Sato fled with his remaining followers aboard a single ship to the Yavin system. There, on the jungle moon called Yavin 4, he set up his final hideout. Sato buried his Sith battleship deep underground and left his Massassi crew behind as guards. He ordered the Massassi to build a series of huge temples across the moon. These massive buildings were designed as dark side power sources. Using Sith technology and magic, Sato sealed himself in a special chamber beneath the main temple. He put himself in suspended animation, promising to wait until someone came who would continue his dark teachings. Planning to create guards to protect his legacy, Sato used Sith alchemy to perform horrible experiments on the Massassi he had brought with him. Through his alchemical knowledge, he transformed them into stronger and more violent creatures, but much less intelligent. Over the centuries after Sato went into hibernation, these primitive Massassi savages got even worse, becoming powerful but simple-minded beings. The third group of survivors was accidental. The crew of the ship Omen, mostly human and part Sith under Sato's command, got knocked off course during hyperspace travel. A Jedi starfighter had attacked them while they mined lignin ore before the Battle of Kirak, causing their ship to crash into its sister ship, Harbinger. These Sith found an unknown planet that the natives called Kesh. The survivors conquered the native Kashiri people, who started worshipping them as godlike beings called the Skyborn from their legends. The scattering after the Great Hyperspace War sped up the decline of the pure Sith genetic line. Intermarriage with human and near-human populations became increasingly common as survivors tried to blend into existing communities to avoid detection and persecution. The distinctive Sith pure-blood physical features became rarer with each generation. The genetic decline meant a huge loss of unique biological ability. The natural force sensitivity and dark side connection that characterized the original species couldn't be fully replicated through training alone. Later generations of Sith relied more heavily on discipline, philosophy, and ambition rather than the inborn abilities of their pure-blood ancestors. Nevertheless, the cultural and philosophical elements of Sith identity proved tougher than biological traits. Core beliefs about passion, strength, and power that defined the original species kept influencing practitioners regardless of genetic heritage. The survivors who scattered across known space carried with them the knowledge, artifacts, and ideas that would keep threatening the Republic for centuries to come. The knowledge arrived in 3 hidden places. On Yavin 4, Naga Sato slept in suspended animation, dreaming of the day someone would awaken him. On Dromund Kaas, the Sith Emperor Vitiate built a new empire in secret, far from Republic eyes. And on distant Kesh, the Lost Tribe adapted to their isolation, preserving their traditions across generations. 6 centuries after the Great Hyperspace War, that call would be answered. A Jedi Knight, talented and ambitious, would follow rumors and intuition to a forgotten jungle moon. There, he would discover a sleeping Dark Lord and learn secrets that would make him a king. His name was Freedon Nadd, and his discovery would unleash a new age of darkness. The Jedi Order survived the Great Hyperspace War, but the victory left a dangerous legacy. Sith artifacts, scrolls, amulets, and ancient texts filled with darkside knowledge remained scattered across the galaxy. The Republic believed the Sith threat had ended, but it hadn't. Around 6 centuries after the war, a young Jedi named Freedon Nadd trained on Ossus, the Jedi's main library world. He stood out among his peers for his enthusiasm and dedication. His instructors praised his openness and willingness to fully embrace the Force. They agreed he showed great promise and could become a Jedi Master quickly, at least in spirit if not in technique. Then, the Jedi Masters denied him the rank of Jedi Knight. When the time came to promote apprentices, they passed over Nadd completely. Disappointment settled on him, followed quickly by despair and hurt. He couldn't understand why, especially since no instructor had ever hinted that this might happen, and everyone had praised his abilities and skill at learning. His confusion led him to Master Mata Tremaine, an ancient Jedi woman from the world of Koroth. She had spent most of her time practicing lightsaber techniques on the outskirts of Ossus. Though she had spoken little to him, Nadd sensed she could see the universe in its true form, rather than through the distorted perceptions most others saw. He found her executing a practice routine with perfect precision, her blade making no wasted movements. He stood at the edge of the garden, waiting somewhat impatiently for her to acknowledge him. After half an hour of silence, Nadd could no longer hold back. He spoke in a rush, his words jumbled with frustration and anger about being abandoned. Mata suddenly stopped her practice and pointed her lightsaber directly at his chest, the blade stopping just centimeters away. Nadd froze, but Mata simply resumed her training as if nothing had happened. Frustrated, Nadd turned and headed toward the wild lands surrounding the city. A withered voice called his name from behind him. He stopped and slowly turned around. Mata stood with her lightsaber held before her. With a flick of her finger, the bright blade retracted into its hilt. She told him that some things cannot be taught directly. Some things he must find in himself. If the Master showed it to him directly and told him to look at it, he would not understand. Jedi must be willing to look into their own hearts and spirits. If he did not, he would never become a true Jedi. Nadd pleaded with her, insisting he wanted to be a Jedi and was willing to do whatever it took if she would just point him in the right direction. Despite his persistence, the Jedi Master refused to give him any information. Rage suddenly filled Nadd, pulling together all his anger and hurt into one focused emotion. He shouted that the Masters hid behind secrets. They didn't want apprentices to learn these techniques because that would threaten their authority. As he stepped toward her, anger filled his entire body. He declared he was a Jedi regardless of what they said, and didn't need their permission. Mata remained silent as she watched him approach. Nadd accused her of refusing to answer rather than being unable to, claiming the Masters spoke in circles and expected apprentices to follow blindly. He refused to play that game, and they couldn't handle his defiance. He vowed to become the greatest Jedi who ever lived, with or without their help. Mata narrowed her eyes slightly and ignited her lightsaber. She told him to prove it, challenging him to show he was truly a Jedi. Nadd responded that she couldn't scare him away like she had scared others. He was stronger than her and wouldn't be intimidated. He drew his lightsaber and ignited it, circling slowly to match her movement. If he let her win, it would prove she was right, that he would never become a Jedi. Becoming a Jedi was all he had ever wanted, and he wouldn't let her or any other master take it away. He lunged forward. Mata deflected his strike and thrust her saber at his ribs. Nadd barely managed to block the attack. They exchanged several more strikes, and Nadd struggled to keep up with her precise movements. Then, he saw an opening. Mata made a slight mistake that left her vulnerable. Despite her confidence, she had made an error. Now, Nadd could prove himself. He swung his lightsaber at Mata's shoulder. She looked up as the blade came around, but instead of defending herself, she gazed directly into Nadd's eyes. Her expression was calm and accepting, showing a strength Nadd hadn't seen before. Soon, realization dawns to him. Mata had been testing him, and he had failed by seeing it as a threat. He tried desperately to stop his strike or angle it away from her, but it was too late. His lightsaber cut through Mata's shoulder. Her robes collapsed to the floor, empty. Nadd stared at the lifeless cloth lying before him. He blamed himself for his own pride. But the more he thought about the situation, the more he realized that Mata had brought her death upon herself. She didn't have to do what she did to prove her point. She was the arrogant one. She was responsible for the pain he was feeling, and yet she wasn't around now to help him with it. She had taken the easy path, and she was the Jedi Master. How could they refuse to make him a Jedi Knight when the Jedi Masters were weaker than he was? In a rage that clouded his thoughts and directed all his emotions into his anger, he fled from Ossus. Plans of revenge for what the Jedi had done to him emerged from the darkest places within him, feeding his anger and giving him focus. As his world crashed down around him, he clung to his thoughts of revenge. One day, he knew, he would destroy those who had tried to destroy him. But he needed to learn more about the Force. He needed to possess more power than Jedi. From all of his studies, he knew of only one source that would readily accept his apprenticeship and teach him to use the Force without limits: the Sith. As Ossus disappeared into a tiny point below him, he set a course for Ashas Ree, an ancient system deep in the dark heart of what had once been the Sith Empire. He would return. He only needed time to become the greatest Sith sorcerer that had ever existed. 6 centuries after Naga Sato exiled himself on the jungle moon of Yavin 4, Freedon Nadd followed rumors to the isolated system. In the centuries since the defeated Dark Lord had entered suspended animation beneath the main temple, the Massassi warriors Sato had brought with him had transformed into primitive but powerful beings through continued alchemical changes. When Nadd arrived and fought them, his Force abilities reminded the Massassi of their origins. They showed him where the Dark Lord had sealed himself in suspended animation, waiting for someone to awaken him. Nadd revived the ancient Sith Lord, and Sato instructed the Jedi in the dark side of the Force, the corrupted and destructive applications of power that the Sith had mastered. Freedon Nadd then killed his mentor and set about making himself a king on the primitive world of Onderon, a planet outside the boundaries of the Old Republic. Centuries before, the peaceful people of Onderon had been attacked by horrible creatures that crossed over from the nearby moon Duxan. The predators took a terrible toll on the population until the people constructed a walled city called Isis for their protection. Freedon Nadd, with his knowledge of Sith magic, the term used for advanced darkside techniques, easily made himself the leader of these people. Over the decades, the city grew, steadily pushing back the jungle. One of the policies Nadd put in place was to banish criminals outside the walls of Isis, where they would be devoured by the dangerous predators. However, some of these exiles managed to survive. They banded together and even learned how to capture the beasts and tame them. Riding on the backs of flying beasts and carrying handmade weapons, the survivors struck back against the city that had exiled them. This began centuries of unrest and rebellion, a scattered resistance war that even Freedon Nadd's powers could not crush. After Nadd's death, the sarcophagus containing his body became a focus of dark side energy that was used by his descendants. Nadd's legacy passed from generation to generation. His spirit, however, was not finished influencing events. Nearly 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, the Jedi Order had grown into a recognized force for peace across the Republic. The Jedi acted as watchmen of new systems, helping them transition into the Republic and dealing with local problems. Jedi Master Arca Jeth of Arcania received responsibility for overseeing the Onderon system. Rather than becoming the watchman himself, he sent 3 of his students, the brothers Ulic and Kay Keldroma, and taught Donida, a Twi'lek. The 3 Jedi arrived on war-torn Onderon. Queen Aminoa greeted them and explained the attacks by the Beast Riders. She requested help from the Jedi. In a bold move, the Riders soon attacked the palace itself, kidnapping Queen Aminoa's daughter, Galia. The Keldroma brothers and Donida set out to rescue her, but they discovered that events were not what they seemed. Galia and the warlord leader Auron Kira had planned the abduction themselves. They intended to marry and unify the 2 societies, ending centuries of bloodshed. Queen Aminoa, however, had no interest in peace. For years, she had been tapping into Freedon Nadd's power, drawing on the dark side energy still radiating from his tomb. In her rage, she called upon the dark side to destroy Auron Kira's people. The Jedi fought back, but they were outmatched. In the struggle, Kay Keldroma lost his arm, which he later replaced with a mechanical prosthesis, an artificial limb. Only Master Arca's arrival prevented disaster. Arca used Jedi battle meditation, a rare force ability that allows a Jedi to influence the morale and coordination of allies and enemies during combat to turn the tide of the conflict. Galia and Auron Kira then worked to restore their world to peace. Elsewhere in the galaxy, another Jedi was beginning her own journey. Nomi Sunrider had taken up the lightsaber after her husband Andor died in an ambush on the Stennis system. On the harsh world of Ambria, she began training with Master Thon, an armor-plated Chuktai, a large reptilian species of savage appearance but deep wisdom. Nomi Sunrider became a master of battle meditation. After training with Thon for some months, he brought her to the Jedi Learning Center on Ossus. There, with other Jedi students, Nomi learned even more of the Force. Master Thon turned her training over to Master Vodosiask Bas, and she finally built her own personal lightsaber. 2 years after Queen Aminoa's defeat, unrest continued on Onderon. The trouble was sparked primarily by a grim reverence for the memory of Freedon Nadd. In an attempt to remove the source of corruption, Master Arca and his students prepared to move the sarcophagi containing Queen Aminoa and Freedon Nadd's remains to the monster-filled moon of Duxon. During the funeral procession, followers of Freedon Nadd, called Naddists, launched an unexpected attack from beneath the city. The Naddist rebels captured the royal sarcophagi. The Jedi then learned that Queen Aminoa's husband, King Omin, had been kept alive in a secret life support facility. Suspicious, Arca, Galia, and Ulic Keldroma visited the old man. They discovered that Omin had allied himself with a follower of Freedon Nadd. The spirit of Freedon Nadd appeared and joined forces with Omin, crippling Master Arca with bolts of dark side energy. Omin fled with the paralyzed Arca to another stronghold, where his captive had been taken. Hurt by his failure, Ulic Keldroma called for assistance from Republic Jedi and the Jedi Knights. Republic military forces moved toward the Onderon system, while another team of hand-picked Jedi arrived from Ossus. Under fire, the Jedi reinforcements battled through the siege of Isis to join Ulic and his companions. In the middle of the chaos on Onderon, 2 other figures arrived. Satal Keto and his cousin Alima were heirs to the throne of the Empress Teta system, a collection of 7 worlds formerly known as the Koros system. Spoiled, bored, and rich, Alima and their friends had dabbled in Sith magic. They armed themselves with artifacts recovered by the Jedi during the Great Hyperspace War 1,000 years before. These aristocrats called themselves the Krath, after an obscure legend from their childhood. Satal Keto had stolen an ancient book of Sith secrets from a museum on Coruscant, the Republic capital world. The book was written in an ancient Sith language that Satal could not read. Encouraged by the ambitious Alima, they departed for Onderon, hoping to find someone who could translate it. Using their newly learned darkside abilities and plain luck, the two made an unlikely escape as their ship crashed into the stronghold where King Omin held Master Arca prisoner. A scribe worked carefully to reproduce the stolen book. The spirit of Freedon Nadd appeared to Satal and Alima. With the Republic troops storming the city and the unified Jedi on their way, Nadd knew that King Omin would be defeated. Instead, Nadd threw his support to the two young aristocrats. He told Satal Keto and Alima that they alone held the key to the rebirth of the Sith Golden Age, and that he would guide them. The 7 Jedi students sensed Master Arca's suffering. They charged past the Darkside Defenders and the Sith War droids, ancient battle machines powered by Darkside energy, descending into the depths of the Undercity. They came face to face with King Omin. Omin threw a wave of Darkside hatred at the Jedi, battering them back. Ulic, drawing on the light side of the Force, fought off the darkness and rushed forward. He slashed with his lightsaber at the metal support structure that held Omin upright. Without the mechanical support, Omin collapsed. The spirit of Freedon Nadd appeared near Omin's body. Nadd said that unlike the brave Jedi standing before him, the old man belonged to the dark side. As Omin died, Master Arca was freed from the dark side torture. Nadd's spirit faded, but not before delivering a chilling message. He told the Jedi they had lost, though they did not yet know it. In a deep corridor, the spirit had already given Satal and Alima the book, a Sith amulet that concentrated darkside power, and a pair of Sith swords. With Omin dead and the Naddists defeated, the Republic established martial law and quickly restored order to Isis. Meanwhile, Satal and Alima escaped with their Sith treasures. Freedon Nadd's and Queen Aminoa's sarcophagi were finally brought to Duxon, where they were placed in a tomb built to withstand time. Ulic wondered aloud what Nadd meant when he said the Jedi had lost. Master Arca replied, recalling words from thousands of years ago, that the ancient Sith prophecies predicted a time when the Dark Lords would return. Satal Keto and Alima returned home to the Empress Teta system with their Sith knowledge and artifacts. They staged a coup, killing old aristocratic leaders in their bid for power. However, actually controlling people proved harder than overthrowing the government. The 7 worlds revolted against them. Satal Keto and Alima used their new Sith powers to crush the resistance. Word of the revolt and the alarming use of Sith sorcery reached Onderon. Nomi Sunrider and Ulic Keldroma had grown close during the reconstruction of Isis. Master Arca decided to send them both to deal with the situation in the Empress Teta system. They joined Republic military forces heading to the battles around the 7 worlds. Ulic and Nomi used their Jedi abilities to help, but Alima countered with her own powerful Sith illusions. Force created false images that could confuse and mislead opponents. In a suicide attack, one of the Krath ships nearly destroyed one of the Republic fleet's main warships. The Republic fleet retreated. Around the same time, on distant Dantooine in Wild Space, a remote region of the galaxy, Jedi Master Vodosiask Bas trained 3 students. 2 were Cathar mates named Crado and Silvar. The Cathar were a feline species known for their strength and loyalty. Vodo's most talented apprentice was Exar Kun. Kun easily defeated Crado in a lightsaber duel. He then fought against Silvar. As tensions rose, she slashed him across the face with her claws. Humiliated, Vodo stepped in to stop the fight. Kun met the challenge and defeated his own teacher. Ambitious and curious, Kun had secretly studied legends of the Golden Age of the Sith. He followed dark clues to the tomb of Freedon Nadd on Duxon. He used Sith magic to cut through the Mandalorian iron, an extremely strong metal, sealing the tomb. When Kun cracked open the sarcophagus, only a skeleton lay inside, clothed in black armor. But the spirit form of Nadd shimmered to life. The dark side spoke to Kun. Nadd told him about precious metal scrolls hidden in a compartment beneath his remains. He also told Kun that a great future awaited him in the dark side. Continuing his search, Kun traveled to the Sith tomb world of Coraban. He investigated a spectacular temple. The ceiling collapsed, crushing him beneath the rubble. As he cried out for help, the spirit of Freedon Nadd appeared. Nadd promised to save him, but only if he surrendered entirely to the dark side. Kun made what he thought was an empty promise to save his own life. Nadd sent him further down the path he had already begun to walk. A giant black Sith hound whose power came from the dark side pushed away the rubble, healed Kun's broken bones, and left him lying on the dry clay of Coraban. Exar Kun let out a scream that seemed to echo across the galaxy, calling out to Master Vodo, whom he had abandoned. Master Vodo and all the other Jedi had gathered on the planet Deneba. They called a great meeting to discuss the trouble in the Empress Theta system. The assembly included the host Jedi of the period, Master Arca, Master Thon, Nomi Sunrider, and Ulic Qel-Droma. Jedi witnesses spoke about the dangerous Sith sorcery unleashed by the Krath and the risks of the dark side. In the middle of the assembly, automated war droids rained down through the atmosphere. They unleashed hordes of Krath war droids that attacked the Jedi Knights. The Jedi defended themselves in a fierce battle. Master Arca died even as he saved the life of his student Ulic Qel-Droma. This became the turning point in Ulic's life, breaking his spirit and leaving him vulnerable to the dark side's influence. As the Jedi Knights recovered from the attack, an anguished Ulic Qel-Droma made a vow. He would go to the Empress Theta system, infiltrate the Krath, learn their secrets, and destroy them from within. Master Thon warned him against the temptations of the dark side, but Ulic would not listen. His own pride did not allow him to see the danger in his plan to defeat the dark side by pretending to use it. Disguised as a fallen Jedi, Ulic infiltrated the iron-walled city of Sinagar, the Krath capital. He won acceptance into the Krath inner circle by killing an assassin who was targeting Alima. With innocent blood on his own hands, Ulic had taken another step toward his own fall. Alima intended to keep him near as a lover, though Sadal Keto was jealous and highly suspicious. Keto questioned and tortured Ulic, insisting that he was a Jedi spy. Finally, Keto injected Ulic with a Sith poison that affected the mind. Ulic became a Krath general in charge of military forces and Alima's personal ally. As months passed with no word from Ulic, Nomi Sunrider took action. She joined Kay Qel-Droma and Tot Danita in an attempt to rescue the Jedi from the Krath. Nomi ended up as a prisoner inside the Sinagar fortress. Ulic, trying to maintain his cover, ordered Sadal Keto's execution. When Nomi escaped, Sadal Keto sent his men to kill Ulic, believing the Krath's new general to be a Jedi spy. Instead, Ulic killed Keto in a duel. He then took his place beside Alima as the new ruler of the Krath. On Coraban, Exar Kun had been healed and reborn in the dark side. The spirit of Freedon Nadd urged Kun to travel to Yavin 4, the last stronghold of Naga Sato, who had instructed Nadd himself centuries before. On the jungle moon, Exar Kun discovered the degenerate descendants of the Masasi. They tried to sacrifice him to a gigantic monster beneath the main temple. Kun once again called upon the dark side to save himself. Freedon Nadd's spirit reappeared, pleased with Kun's victory. He claimed Kun as an ally and student, but Kun would hear none of it. Still burning with the Sith powers he had mastered, Kun lashed out and destroyed Nadd's spirit for all time. Calling himself the Dark Lord of the Sith, Kun then took control of the Masasi. He had them construct huge structures based on Sith architecture, designed to focus dark-side energies. Beneath the largest temple, Kun found and repaired Naga Sato's Sith battleship, taking it as his own. Using dark-side alchemy, Sith techniques for corrupting and twisting living things, Kun created freakish, two-headed creatures and hulking monsters. He formed a golden sphere that focused power, trapping the children of the Masasi inside it and allowing him to feed off their life energy. With his mind, he reached across the galaxy using dark side abilities, sensing the Sith magic being used in the Empress Theta system. Knowing that his purpose was to bring about a new Sith Golden Age, Kun traveled to Sinagar to destroy what he saw as an unwanted rival, Ulic Qel-Droma. The Jedi Knight Kay Qel-Droma, Nomi Sunrider, and Tot Danita launched a second rescue mission to pull Ulic away from the Krath. Ulic responded to the Jedi attack with all his military forces. Blind to his own fall, he refused to join them. The Jedi Knights withdrew in failure. At that moment, Exar Kun burst into the palace. He and Ulic fought with a blazing clash of Jedi blades. During the fight, the Sith amulets both men wore began to shimmer. Before them appeared the image of the long-dead Dark Lord of the Sith, Marka Ragnos. This was the Sith ruler whose death had triggered the war between Naga Sato and Ludo Kresh 1,000 years earlier. Ragnos commanded the two men to join forces. The alliance of Ulic Qel-Droma and Exar Kun could bring about the long-predicted return of Sith glory. No longer enemies, Kun and Qel-Droma clasped hands and promised to do what was necessary to create that future. Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma brought their forces together. Kun worked to create Sith converts among weaker-willed Jedi, spreading his teachings on Ossus itself as if he were a prophet. Among those who believed was Kun's former training companion, the Cathar male Crado. Crado's mate, Silvar, remained loyal to the light. From the Jedi library on Ossus, Kun stole the original Sith holocron used by Naga Sato. A holocron was an ancient information storage device that could preserve the knowledge and personality of its creator. Caretaker Odan Ur was killed during the theft, fulfilling a prophecy by Master Uru that Odan Ur would die among his books. Kun then took his converts back to the Massassi temples on Yavin 4. There, he unleashed a powerful Sith spell that bound the fallen Jedi to him. He declared himself the sole master of all Sith teachings. Ulic Qel-Droma took control of the war's military strategy. He forged an alliance with the Mandalorian warrior clans. The Mandalorians were a culture of warriors who had left their homeworld and now searched the galaxy looking for worthy opponents to fight. Ulic defeated their leader, Mandalore, in open combat. The Mandalorian Crusaders agreed to become an arm of the Krath military. The Mandalorians and their basilisk war droids, large combat machines ridden into battle, worked with Alima's Sith illusions to strike at Republic outposts and shipyards, gathering supplies and weapons. Ulic could also count on a super weapon called the Dark Reaper. This ancient Sith device was capable of draining the life energy of thousands of beings at once. Ulic unleashed the Dark Reaper against hundreds of Republic troops on the outpost world of Raxus Prime. Believing the time was right, Ulic, Alima, and Mandalore launched an all-out assault on Coruscant itself. The capital's loyal Jedi force joined together against the invaders. Surrounded by the light side of the Force and other Jedi, Ulic was captured. After Alima fled, the prisoner was stripped of his weapons and taken to face trial for his crimes against the Republic. The trial took place in the Great Senate Hall on Coruscant. For a Jedi Knight, betrayal of the Republic was considered an unforgivable crime. Ulic, however, showed no regret. Master Vodo attended the trial, suspecting that Ulic wasn't acting alone. Vodo sensed the dark presence of his lost student, Exar Kun. During Ulic's sentencing, the doors crashed open. Exar Kun strode in, flanked by bestial Massassi bodyguards. Before the whole assembly, the new Dark Lord of the Sith used his powers to control the minds of observers and manipulate the President of the Senate. Master Vodosiask Bas stepped forward to battle his former student. Exar Kun, now armed with a double-bladed lightsaber, a weapon with energy blades extending from both ends of the hilt, stabbed and killed Master Vodo. Ulic and Kun left the Jedi and senators behind, returning to their stronghold on Yavin 4. Vodo wasn't the only Jedi to die that day. Exar Kun had sent his corrupted disciples on a mission to assassinate their own masters, and the wave of deaths shocked the Republic. Kun's lieutenant, Crado, attempted to kill his former master Thon, but was defeated and fled to join Alima. Krato then teamed with Alima to launch a military strike using Nagasato's Sith flagship. The ship carried a star-destroying weapon. They intended to use it against the sons of the Kron cluster, not realizing that their masters had set them up to fail. The chain reaction triggered by the weapon was far more powerful than expected. It consumed them as well, punishing Krato for his failure and Alima for her disloyalty. She had tried to take over Ulic's forces while he was imprisoned. The blazing shockwave from the exploding stars streaked toward Ossus, exactly as Kun had planned. During the frantic evacuation of Ossus, the Jedi scrambled to save as many vital artifacts as possible. In the middle of this chaos, Exar Kun and Ulic brought their forces to the library world to raid anything that remained. A tree-like Neti Jedi named Master Ud Banar had taken over as librarian after Odan Ur's death. Knowing he could not protect every item from the coming shockwave, Ud called upon the Force inside the soil of Ossus and transformed himself into a gigantic tree. He gathered up the remaining treasures in his roots and branches, preserving them. Exar Kun departed Ossus with whatever plunder he could carry. As the waves of supernova fire drew closer, Ulic Qel-Droma fought against the rallying Republic and Jedi forces. His brother Kay tried to stop him, but Ulic unleashed his rage and struck him down. Staring at Kay's body and realizing what he had done, Ulic collapsed in horror. Nomi Sunrider and Tat Danita arrived too late to help. Overcome with grief, Nomi used a rare Force ability to sever Ulic's connection to the Force, stripping him of his powers. This technique was almost never used, as cutting someone off from the Force was considered an extreme punishment. No longer able to sense the Force, Ulic finally saw how much pain he had caused. He had intended to avenge Master Arca, but instead had become worse than his enemies. Knowing how the Sith War must end, Ulic offered to lead the remaining Jedi to Exar Kun's headquarters on Yavin 4. When Kun realized the Jedi were coming, he gathered the remaining Massassi into the Great Temple and chained himself to the focal point of the pyramids. As the Jedi forces in orbit generated a wall of light-side energy, Kun drained the life force from his Massassi slaves. He triggered a final wave of Sith sorcery that freed his spirit from his body, but trapped it inside the temple structures. He found himself imprisoned, unable to escape. The Jedi attack resulted in massive fires across the jungles, burning the trees and scorching the temple complex so completely that nothing could survive on the surface. The victorious Jedi left and began working to repair their damaged Republic. The Mandalorian Crusaders, defeated during a battle on Onderon, fled under new leadership. The Republic seized control of the Empress Teta system, scattering the remaining Krath forces. Surviving Sith followers retreated to territory in the Outer Rim near Coraban, Thule, and Yavin. The Dark Reaper superweapon lay destroyed on Raxus Prime, though its power source, the Force Harvester, remained intact and overlooked beneath piles of garbage. With Ossus in ruins, the Jedi relocated their headquarters to their existing temple on Coruscant, expanding the structure to accommodate their needs. However, Ulic's story was not finished. 10 years after losing his Force abilities, he lived as a disgraced war criminal, never regaining his connection to the Force. Broken and haunted by guilt, he wandered from world to world before eventually settling on the frozen world of Renvar in the ruins of an abandoned fortress. Nomi Sunrider was also deeply affected by Ulic's fall, as he had been the second man she had ever loved. She devoted much of her life to politics and rebuilding the Jedi Order, but her focus on these duties meant she failed to give enough attention to her daughter, young Vima. Without proper Jedi training, Vima eventually ran away from a Jedi gathering at Exis Station and set out to find Ulic, convinced the legendary warrior would take her as an apprentice. On Renvar, Vima persuaded the bitter hermit to teach her what he knew of the Force. Even without the ability to use his powers, Ulic taught Vima about honor and duty, and his heart softened toward the girl. Vima came to love him like the father she'd never known. Meanwhile, Silvar, the Cathar Jedi, had never overcome her anger. She blamed Ulic for the death of her mate, Krato, during the Sith War, and vowed to make him pay for his crimes. She enlisted the help of a scavenger pilot named Hogon and tracked them to Renvar. When Silvar and Nomi confronted Ulic, Vima helped them overcome their anger and pain. They managed to forgive the man who had already paid so much for his crimes. But Hogon, eager to make his own mark on history, shot Ulic in the back. Then, something unexpected happened. Though he had been cut off from the Force, Ulic's body disappeared at the moment of death, becoming one with the Force. This was a technique known only to true Jedi Masters, proving that he had returned to the light side. In the end, Ulic Qel-Droma died a Jedi. With such a beginning to her career, Vima eventually became one of the greatest Jedi of her age. The Jedi had defeated the Sith once again, but the dark side could never be fully destroyed. Though threats like Revan and the Sith Triumvirate would soon follow, the Sith as a unified order would eventually fade into myth, only to rise again around 2000 BBY under Darth Ruusan. In 3976 BBY, the Mandalorian clans united under a single leader who called himself Mandalore the Ultimate. Believing the Republic was weak and vulnerable, he summoned warriors from all the clans. They answered without question and launched an all-out war against the Republic, attacking colonies along the outer edges of Republic space. The Jedi Council refused to help, sensing something darker behind the Mandalorian attacks. They ordered the Jedi to stay out of the conflict. However, two young Jedi Knights, Revan and Malak, grew frustrated watching Republic worlds burn while the Council did nothing. Revan and Malak defied their orders, gathering other Jedi who had agreed with them and leaving the Order to join the Republic military. These rogue Jedi became generals, leading Republic soldiers against the Mandalorian invaders. Under Revan's command, they won battle after battle. The former Jedi proved to be a brilliant military strategist, and the tide of the war began to turn. The war ended at Malachor V with the destruction on a scale the galaxy had never seen. By 3960 BBY, one of Revan's generals, a Jedi named Meetra Surik, commanded a fleet at the final battle. She gave the order to activate a terrible superweapon called the Mass Shadow Generator. The weapon drew on gravity itself to destroy entire fleets instantly, vaporizing the planet's surface and killing thousands in moments. The mass killing created an overwhelming echo in the Force. Meetra felt every single loss at once, and the trauma nearly destroyed her. To survive, she cut herself off from the Force completely. When she returned to face the Jedi Council, they found her guilty of following Revan into war, stripped her of her rank and lightsaber, then exiled her from the Order. She became known simply as the Exile. Realizing defeat was coming, Mandalore the Ultimate challenged Revan to single combat. Though the Mandalorian leader fought hard, he couldn't match the most powerful champion of the Jedi Order. The former Jedi killed him in the duel, but understood that winning the fight wasn't enough. In Mandalorian culture, when one leader died, another warrior could claim leadership by taking the fallen Mandalore's helmet, the recognized symbol of authority. Revan took the mask from Mandalore the Ultimate's body and hid it on an unknown world. Without the mask, no new Mandalore could be chosen. The clans began fighting amongst themselves for power, and within weeks, the fragmented Mandalorian armies accepted unconditional surrender. The former Jedi had broken not just their military, but their entire culture. After the war ended, most of the Jedi who had followed Revan returned to face the Council's judgment. Meetra Surik was exiled, but Revan and Malak never came back. They disappeared into the unknown regions beyond Mandalorian space, pursuing retreating Mandalorian forces. The galaxy assumed they were hunting down the last remnants of the Mandalorian threat. What they found instead would doom them both. Revan and Malak discovered a planet called Nathema, a world completely empty and stripped of the Force itself. Walking on its surface was horrifying. There was absolute silence, no color except brown and gray, and a complete emptiness where the Force should have been. Even the buildings and ships were intact, frozen in time, as if everyone had simply vanished. Nearly 1,000 years earlier, a powerful Sith Lord named Vitiate had performed a dark ritual that consumed the life force of thousands of Sith Lords in a single moment. He devoured everything on the planet: life, sound, color, even the Force itself. The ritual made him immortal and gave him incredible power. He declared himself the Sith Emperor and led survivors of the Great Hyperspace War into hiding, settling on a world called Dromund Kaas to rebuild in secret while planning revenge against the Republic. Revan and Malak searched the abandoned buildings on Nathema and found archives pointing them toward Dromund Kaas, where the hidden Sith Empire waited. When they arrived, they were captured before they could report back to the Republic. The Emperor sentenced Revan to be executed publicly, but that wasn't his real plan. The Emperor possessed the power to dominate minds completely, breaking the wills of even the strongest opponents and turning them into puppets who served him without question. The Emperor shattered their minds and bent them to his will. He twisted Revan and Malak into his servants. However, he underestimated their strength. They were powerful enough to partially resist his control, twisting his domination just enough to free themselves somewhat, though they couldn't break free entirely. The Emperor sent them back to the Republic as corrupted agents, expecting them to serve his purposes. In 3959 BBY, Revan and Malak returned to Republic space as conquerors, calling themselves Sith Lords. They had found an ancient space station called the Starforge, a powerful creation of the long-gone Rakata species. The Starforge could produce massive amounts of ships and weapons by drawing on the dark side of the Force. With this factory in their control, they built a fleet and declared war on the Republic. The Jedi Civil War had begun. The Republic expected peace after defeating the Mandalorians, but instead faced a new war led by the very Jedi who had saved them. Revan and Malak attacked Republic worlds with overwhelming force, using strategies and tactics that former Jedi had perfected during the Mandalorian Wars. Then, Malak betrayed his master. During a battle, Malak ordered his ships to fire on Revan's flagship, trying to eliminate him and take control. The attack nearly succeeded, shattering Revan's body and breaking his mind. A Jedi strike team led by Bastila Shan had been attempting to capture the fallen Jedi at that exact moment and found him barely alive. The Jedi Council made a choice that would change everything. They decided to save Revan's life, but wipe his memories completely, stripping away his identity, his past, and his knowledge of the Sith Emperor. Then they rebuilt him with a new identity, turning him into a weapon they could use against Darth Malak. The redeemed Revan eventually defeated Malak and destroyed the Starforge. The Republic proclaimed him as a hero and awarded him its highest honor, the Cross of Glory. The former Sith Lord married Bastila Shan, and they tried to live quietly on Coruscant. However, Revan's memories slowly began returning. He remembered the Mandalorian Wars and becoming Darth Revan, but something was still missing. He couldn't remember what had happened on Dromund Kaas, or what the Sith Emperor had done to him and Malak. Revan began having nightmares about a world covered in eternal storms and darkness. He knew something terrible was still out there, something far more dangerous than the Mandalorians or the Starforge. By 3952 BBY, with Bastila pregnant with their son, the former Jedi left to find answers. He took his Mandalorian friend Canderous Ordo and his droid T3M4, searching for the storm-covered world from his nightmares. His search led him back to Nathema. When his ship arrived there in 3951 BBY, all his suppressed memories came flooding back at once. He remembered everything: the horror of Nathema, finding the archives, discovering Dromund Kaas, and what the Emperor had done to him. However, another ship was there. A Sith Lord named Scourge, serving a Dark Council member named Darth Nyrus, shot down Revan's ship, which crashed on Nathema's empty surface. Scourge captured Revan and delivered him to Nyrus, who imprisoned him in her stronghold on Dromund Kaas. For 3 years, the former Jedi was held in a dungeon, given substances daily to keep him weak and helpless, while Scourge interrogated and tortured him regularly. During this time, Revan learned about Sith society and politics, as well as the Emperor's plan to invade the Republic in a war that could destroy both civilizations. Meanwhile, back on Coruscant, Bastila gave birth to their son and raised him alone, not knowing if Revan was alive. 3 years passed before T3-M4, who had escaped when Revan was captured, finally found Mitra Surik. The Exile had regained her connection to the Force after years of wandering. T3 showed her a recording of Scourge taking Revan, and Mitra agreed to help rescue him. Mitra traveled to Dromund Kaas and tracked down Scourge. By this time, Scourge had learned that the Emperor was truly insane. The Emperor's ultimate plan wasn't just to conquer the galaxy, but to consume all life in it, repeating what he'd done to Nathema in every world until he stood alone. When Mitra confronted him, Scourge agreed to help rescue the former Jedi. Together, they freed him from his prison. Bastila had given Mitra Revan's old mask, hoping it would help restore his memories. When the former Jedi touched the mask, everything came flooding back. He remembered his past fully for the first time. With his memories restored, Revan helped Scourge and Mitra fight their way out, eliminating Darth Nyrus, who had been plotting against the Emperor. The three formed a desperate plan to eliminate the Emperor. The Emperor had just eliminated the entire Dark Council, all 12 members, for conspiring against him. The Empire was in chaos, and most of the Emperor's elite Imperial Guard were out patrolling the streets. If they struck quickly at dawn, they might catch the Emperor with minimal guards. The former Jedi explained that he now knew the Emperor's techniques for dominating minds, and could shield his own mind from that control while teaching the others to do the same. In 3948 BBY, Revan, Mitra, and Scourge prepared for their final assault. The night before the attack, Scourge experienced a vision while meditating. Unlike a normal dream, the vision was clear and detailed, showing him their defeat. He saw himself, Revan, and Mitra lying broken on the throne room floor while the Emperor approached to finish them. When he tried to discuss it with Revan, the former Jedi told him that visions showed only one possible future among many, and that what they saw could still be changed. At dawn, they made their approach to the Imperial Citadel. Scourge led them through the empty streets of Kaas City, avoiding the handful of Imperial Guard patrols that still wandered despite the previous night's chaos. The signs of destruction were everywhere. Burned-out buildings lined the streets, windows shattered, bodies still lying in doorways where they had fallen during the Emperor's purge. When they reached the Citadel entrance, Imperial Guards stopped them. Scourge used his authority as a Sith Lord to demand an audience with the Emperor, and though the guards were suspicious, they eventually agreed to escort the group to the throne room. The soldiers led them through twisting corridors that the former Jedi remembered from his last visit, when he and Malak had walked into a trap. As they approached the throne room, a guard captain recognized Revan and ordered her soldiers to attack. The narrow hallway exploded into violence. Mitra threw herself at the guards, blocking the entrance, while Scourge fought the captain in close combat. The former Jedi used the Force to blast the sealed doors wide open, then rushed inside with T3 rolling close behind. The battle was fierce. The Imperial Guard were not ordinary soldiers. Their connection to the Emperor made them resistant to Force attacks and dangerous opponents, even for Jedi. Revan cut down one guard, then used the Force to collapse part of the corridor ceiling on reinforcements approaching from deeper in the Citadel. The falling debris bought Mitra and Scourge enough time to retreat into the throne room. As soon as they crossed the threshold, the former Jedi slammed the doors shut and ordered T3 to seal them. At the far end of the throne room, the Emperor sat watching them with cold stillness. Revan felt the same heavy presence of dark side power that had overwhelmed him during their first encounter. The Emperor rose from his throne, and the former Jedi charged forward without hesitation. The Emperor stood perfectly still, gathering his power before unleashing a wave of Force energy that swept Revan off his feet and sent him flying backward. The former Jedi twisted in midair and rolled with the impact, then advanced again more cautiously. He could feel the Emperor trying to dominate his mind as before, attempting to crush his will and control him. This time, however, Revan was ready. He opened himself to both the light and the dark sides of the Force at the same time, then released that energy in its purest form. A brilliant flash lit up the air between them. The pure Force energy staggered Revan and sent the Emperor flying backward. Before the Sith Lord could recover, the former Jedi raced toward him. The Emperor rolled to one knee and hurled a bolt of dark-side lightning. Revan blocked it with his lightsaber, though the impact stopped his charge. 3 more bolts followed in quick succession. The former Jedi deflected the first, ducked under the second, then batted the third back toward its source. The reflected lightning struck the Emperor in the chest, sending him sliding across the floor. For the first time, the Emperor's emotionless mask cracked. He rose to his feet, his robe smoking where the lightning had burned him, and raised both hands high. Revan recognized what was coming, a storm of pure dark-side energy, the same technique Darth Nihilus had used against him. He quickly realized that he couldn't close the distance in time to stop the attack, so he prepared to catch and absorb it as he had done before. A dozen bolts of purple lightning arced toward him. The former Jedi tried to contain them, but the Emperor was far more powerful than Nihilus had ever been. The electricity coursed through Revan's body with terrible pain. His skin began to boil and blister, and the flesh of his face melted and stuck to the superheated metal of his mask as the Emperor poured more and more power into him. Through the haze of pain, the former Jedi saw T3 rushing forward. The loyal droid unleashed his flamethrower, bathing the Emperor in fire. At the last instant, the Emperor wrapped himself in the Force to avoid being burned alive, breaking his focus on Revan. The former Jedi collapsed to the ground, severely burned, but still alive. The Emperor turned on the brave droid and unleashed the full power of the Force against T3. The little droid exploded instantly, destroyed in a flash of energy. Revan screamed, but his injured body refused to respond. The Emperor approached with calm, purposeful steps, bent down, picked up the fallen lightsaber, and ignited the blade. As he raised the weapon to deliver the final blow, Mitra hurled her own lightsaber across the throne room. The spinning blade blocked the descending strike, knocking Revan's lightsaber from the Emperor's grasp. The surprise attack caught the Emperor off guard. Mitra rushed forward, using the Force to recall her weapon to her hand, and placed herself between the Emperor and the former Jedi. Scourge hesitated, memories of his vision still fresh before joining them. Revan managed to stand and called his own lightsaber back to his hand. The 3 of them stood side by side, 2 Jedi and a Sith Lord against an Emperor. The Emperor studied them coldly, then spoke to Scourge about his betrayal. The former Jedi declared that Scourge had seen the depths of the Emperor's evil and now stood with them. The Emperor simply replied that Scourge would fall with them as well. For Scourge, time seemed to freeze. The Force washed over him in an overwhelming wave. A million possible futures flickered through his mind at once. In some, the Emperor was destroyed. In others, he had transformed the entire galaxy into a lifeless wasteland. He saw both Revan's triumph and defeat played out over and over in countless different ways, as well as his own life repeated in every way imaginable. He had to choose, but there was no way to know which future was most likely or what actions would lead to which results. Then, in a sudden moment of clarity, he saw a vision that stood out from all the rest. He saw the Emperor lying defeated at the feet of a powerful Jedi, but that Jedi was neither Revan nor Mitra. It was someone who had come centuries in the future. Time snapped back to normal speed. Revan and Mitra stepped forward to begin the final fight. Scourge knew what he had to do. Instead of advancing with his companions, he moved to stand directly behind Mitra. Before she could react, he ignited his lightsaber and drove the blade between her shoulders. Mitra fell forward, gone before she hit the floor. Revan's head snapped towards Scourge in shock and horror. The distraction gave the Emperor the opening he needed. He unleashed another blast of lightning into the former Jedi's chest. The smell of burning flesh filled the throne room as Revan screamed once, then collapsed unconscious to the ground. Scourge dropped to one knee before the Emperor, head bowed. He claimed that he had discovered Revan working with Nyrus and had lured the Jedi here as a trap, waiting for his chance to prove his loyalty. The Emperor tested him by ordering him to eliminate the fallen Jedi, but at the last moment stopped the action, saying Revan could still be useful. Instead of ending him, he offered Scourge a new position as the Emperor's Wrath, his personal enforcer. As a reward for his loyalty, the Emperor promised Scourge eternal life. However, the ritual that granted him immortality came with a terrible price: constant, unending pain that would continue for centuries as he waited for the prophesied champion to finally arrive. When that champion finally came, Scourge would help them finish what Revan had started. The Emperor imprisoned Revan in a secret location, suspending him between life and the end. He fed on Revan's force energy, but the former Jedi resisted. He engaged in constant mental warfare with the Emperor, manipulating him and delaying his plans. The invasion of the Republic that the Emperor had been planning was pushed back again and again. Revan couldn't defeat the Emperor, but he could slow him down. Mitra's spirit refused to join the Force. Instead, she stayed with the former Jedi, sustaining him from beyond. Her loyalty continued even after her body was gone. 50 years later, by 3898 BBY, Bastila was an old woman. Her son had grown into a man and given her grandchildren. The Republic had enjoyed 50 years of peace with no Galactic War and no Sith invasion. Revan's sacrifice had worked. He hadn't defeated the Emperor, but he delayed the invasion long enough for his son to grow up in peace. Bastila still sensed Revan's presence through the Force and still dreamed of him. Somewhere in a hidden prison, the former Jedi continued his silent war against the Emperor, buying time for a champion who would one day come to finish what he'd started. The Jedi Civil War was over, but Revan's fight would continue for centuries. While Revan remained imprisoned in his silent war against the Emperor, the galaxy faced another threat. Years earlier, after Revan had defeated Darth Malak and destroyed the Star Forge around 3956 BBY, the Republic expected peace. The Jedi Civil War was over, and the Sith threat seemed finished. However, the war had left the Jedi Order badly weakened. Thousands of Jedi had fallen in battle, and Revan and Malak had eliminated many more when they attacked the Republic. The survivors were scattered across the galaxy, and many had gone into hiding. When Revan disappeared a few years later, searching for the source of the dark side corruption that had twisted him and Malak, it created a power vacuum. The remnants of Revan's Sith Empire, including soldiers, officers, and dark side followers, were left without a leader. They began fighting amongst themselves for control, and this Sith Civil War created chaos across multiple systems. From that chaos, 3 particularly dangerous Sith Lords emerged. They called themselves the Sith Triumvirate: Darth Traya, Darth Sion, and Darth Nihilus. Each was twisted by the dark side in a unique and terrible way. Together, they would nearly destroy the Jedi Order completely, bringing it closer to extinction than ever before. Darth Traya was once a Jedi Master named Kreia. She had been a historian who trained at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. For years, she taught Padawans and challenged them with difficult questions about the nature of the Force and what it meant to be a Jedi. Her teaching methods were brilliant but controversial, asking questions that other Jedi considered forbidden, such as whether a Jedi who loses their powers remains a Jedi, or whether Jedi under enemy control can still be considered part of the Order. Kreia had been Revan's master at one point. When the Mandalorian Wars began, her students, including Revan, left the Order one by one to fight. Padawan after Padawan abandoned her teachings to follow Revan into battle. The Jedi Council, led by Master Atris, blamed Kreia for this and cast her out of the Order. Betrayed by the Jedi she had served, Kreia withdrew entirely. She followed Revan's path, but in a different way. She was drawn to Malachor V, the site of the terrible battle where the mass shadow generator had been used. The weapon had killed thousands instantly and created what Force sensitives call a wound in the Force, a place where the Force had been damaged or torn. On Malachor V, Kreia founded the Treyas Academy, a Sith stronghold that Revan had left behind. Assassins that Revan had stationed there presented her with ancient Sith writings instead of attacking her. These texts changed her completely. They spoke of contradictions in existence and the idea that the Force itself betrayed those who wielded it. Kreia came to believe that the Force was a lie that betrayed all Force-sensitive beings, forcing them to live in a universe where free will was an illusion. She developed an ultimate goal that no other Sith had ever imagined. She wanted to destroy the Force itself. The wound at Malachor V proved it was possible. Kreia took the name Darth Traya, Lord of Betrayal, and began hunting for others like her. She sought beings twisted by the Force into something unnatural. She found two, Darth Sion and Darth Nihilus. Both were wounds in the Force, broken beings who had been transformed into something monstrous. Darth Sion was ancient, having fought in the Great Sith War decades earlier. As a warrior for the old Sith Empire, he had thrown himself at the Jedi again and again, seeking the end, but always surviving. He developed an incredible pain tolerance and began to believe he was immortal. Then, finally, he was struck down in battle. His body was broken, his wounds fatal, but the end did not come. Instead, something far worse happened. Every part of Sion's failing body came alive with pain. The suffering multiplied 1,000 times over until his mind nearly collapsed. However, his hatred was so intense that it wouldn't let him go. He rose up, using the dark side to hold his broken, rotting flesh together. His body was literally a corpse held together by rage. Every moment of his existence was pure torment, but he had achieved what he'd always believed in: immortality through pain. He became Darth Sion, Lord of Pain. Darth Nihilus was perhaps the most terrifying of the three. Details about his past are unclear, but he had been at Malachor V during the battle. The mass shadow generator's activation, which eliminated thousands instantly, had somehow transformed him. The echo of mass destruction created by all those simultaneous losses affected him in a unique way. He became a wound in the Force, but unlike Mitra Surik, who had cut herself off from the Force to survive, Nihilus became pure hunger. He discovered he could feed on the Force energy of living things. At first, he consumed individuals, then groups. Eventually, he learned he could drain entire planets. The more he fed, the emptier he became, and the greater his hunger grew. He was no longer a person. He had become the hunger itself. A living void wrapped in robes and a mask, Darth Nihilus was the Lord of Hunger. Darth Traya approached the remnants of Revan's Sith Empire as his former master. The surviving soldiers and officers pledged their loyalty to her. With Sion and Nihilus as her apprentices, the Sith Triumvirate was formed. They launched from Malachor V with a single purpose: to wipe out the Jedi Order that had betrayed Traya. The first Jedi Purge began. The Triumvirate hunted Jedi across the galaxy with ruthless efficiency. They didn't wage war like Revan and Malak had. They conducted targeted eliminations, struck from the shadows, and removed Jedi one by one. The Order, already weakened, couldn't mount an effective defense. By 3952 BBY, Darth Nihilus committed his most devastating act. The Jedi had called a convocation on the planet Qatar to discuss the future of their order. Nearly every surviving Jedi Master attended. Master Dorak, Zar Lestin, Vando Tokare, and many others. Nihilus found them and consumed the entire planet. Every living thing on Katar perished instantly as he fed on their force energy. The Jedi Convocation was wiped out in a single moment. Only one survived, a Miraluka Jedi named Visas Mar, whom Nihilus took as his apprentice. Darth Traya hunted Jedi Masters on other worlds. On Dantooine, she eliminated Masters Zez Kael, Kavar, and Vrook Lamar. The Purge continued, and the Jedi Order was brought to the brink of extinction. Historians would later describe this period as the Dark Wars, when the Jedi nearly vanished from the galaxy entirely. However, the Triumvirate did not remain united. Darth Sion and Darth Nihilus grew frustrated with Traya's teachings. She spoke in philosophy and riddles, while they wanted action and power. They were also ambitious and saw an opportunity. Using Nihilus's force draining techniques, they turned on their master. They stripped Traya of her powers, beat her, and severed her connection with the Force. The Lord of Betrayal had been betrayed by her own apprentices. They cast her out, and Sion and Nihilus continued the Jedi Purge without her. Traya, powerless and betrayed again, went searching for something specific: Meetra Surik, the Jedi Exile. Meetra had been Revan's general during the Mandalorian Wars. She had commanded the fleet at Malachor V and gave the order to activate the mass shadow generator on Revan's command. The weapon eliminated thousands of Republic soldiers, Mandalorians, and Jedi in moments. Meetra felt every single loss through the Force all at once. The trauma should have destroyed her, but instead, she did something unique. She cut herself off from the Force completely to survive the pain. When she returned to face the Jedi Council, they found her guilty of following Revan into war. They removed her rank, took her lightsaber, and exiled her from the Order. For years, she wandered the Outer Rim, severed from the Force and believed to be powerless. However, Traya saw something different. Meetra was also a wound in the Force, living proof that life could exist without it. This supported everything Traya believed about the Force being unnecessary and destructive. Through a mental connection, Traya and Meetra revitalized their Force connections together. Traya manipulated the Exile into finding the few surviving Jedi Masters and hunting down Traya's former apprentices. She tested Meetra, trained her, and guided her while hiding her true identity as a Sith Lord. Meetra tracked down the remaining Jedi Masters first. When they gathered on Dantooine to discuss what to do about her, fearing she might be dangerous as a wound in the Force, Traya revealed herself and eliminated them. The last of the Jedi leadership was gone. Then, Meetra went after the Sith Triumvirate. First, she confronted Darth Sion on Coraban. He was drawn to her in a way he didn't understand. Her presence made him feel emotions he had long buried: compassion, respect, even love. These feelings threatened the hatred that kept him alive. He couldn't eliminate her, even though he tried repeatedly. Each time he struck her down, his body fell apart, but his rage brought him back. Yet, she kept returning, and each encounter weakened his hold on life. Next came Darth Nihilus. Meetra, along with the Sith's former apprentice Visas Mar, confronted him on his ship. Nihilus tried to feed on her Force energy, as he had done to entire planets. However, something unexpected happened. Meetra's wound in the Force repelled his hunger. He was trying to consume an emptiness, and it starved him. The most powerful Force-draining ability in the galaxy was useless against someone who was already severed from the Force. Weakened and unable to feed, Nihilus fell to Meetra and Visas in combat. Finally, Meetra returned to Malachor V and the Trayus Academy. There, Darth Traya waited for her. In their final confrontation, Traya revealed the truth about everything. She explained her hatred of the Force and her belief that it must be destroyed. She told Meetra that she had planned every step of the Exile's journey. All the tests, all the manipulation, all the training had led to this moment. Traya asked Meetra to join her in destroying the Force itself. When Meetra refused, Traya attacked. She used her powers to wield 3 lightsabers at once, making them float and strike independently. Despite being physically vulnerable as a scholar rather than a warrior, her mastery of the Force made her incredibly dangerous. The battle was fierce, but Mitra had grown strong through her journey. She had reconnected with the Force in her own unique way and refused to be manipulated any longer. Mitra defeated Darth Traya in combat. As she lay there, Traya revealed one final truth. She had wanted this all along. As a Jedi, even a fallen one, she couldn't face life without the Force, but she hated it too much to continue living with it. Only her end could free her from this contradiction, and it had to come at the hands of someone special, someone who was a wound in the Force and living proof that life existed beyond it. Mitra had been her greatest student and the tool of her freedom. Traya passed, finally released from the Force she had hated. With all 3 members of the Triumvirate gone, the first Jedi Purge ended. Mitra Surik returned to find the scattered survivors of the Jedi Order. She gathered them together and helped rebuild what had nearly been destroyed. The Order was smaller, humbler, and changed by its near extinction, but it survived. Following this, Mitra left on one final journey. She traveled to find Revan, who had been missing for years. What she found led her to Dromund Kaas and the hidden Sith Empire. But that is another story, already told. The Sith Triumvirate's reign was brief, but devastating. In less than a decade, 3 twisted Sith Lords brought the ancient Jedi Order closer to extinction than any threat before them. They proved that the greatest danger to the Jedi wasn't always massive armies or powerful empires. Sometimes, it was individuals broken by the Force in terrible ways, each one a wound in reality itself. The galaxy believed the Sith were finally gone. The Triumvirate was eliminated, Revan's Sith Empire was destroyed, and the dark side followers had been hunted down. The Jedi thought they had seen the last of the ancient enemy. But they were wrong. On Dromund Kaas, deep in the unknown regions, the Sith Emperor Vitiate had established his hidden empire. After leading survivors of the Great Hyperspace War to this storm-shrouded world, he promised his followers they would rebuild their strength in secret and one day return to destroy the Republic. The early decades on Dromund Kaas were brutal and dangerous. The native creatures of the planet were powerful and aggressive, attacking the Sith colonists as they attempted to establish their first settlements. While the Emperor and his Dark Council focused on long-term strategies and dark side rituals, the practical work of survival fell to non-Force users. A military commander named Odil Viken emerged as a critical figure during this period, recruiting ordinary citizens to form the new Imperial military. These soldiers courageously fought the native predators and carved out the space needed for a secure civilization. Viken would later establish the foundation for the modern Imperial Navy and earned recognition as the Empire's first Grand Moff. His success proved that even those without Force abilities could play important roles in the Sith Empire, a fact that would create some ideological tension in the centuries to come. Over the following 1,300 years, the Sith Empire grew stronger in absolute secrecy. The Emperor established the Imperial Citadel on Dromund Kaas as his seat of power, and created the Dark Council to govern the Empire's daily operations. This council consisted of 12 of the most powerful Sith Lords, each controlling a sphere of influence that managed different aspects of Imperial society. One controlled military strategy, while another oversaw the study of ancient artifacts. The structure allowed the Empire to function efficiently while giving powerful Sith Lords enough authority to satisfy their ambitions. Meanwhile, the Emperor himself became increasingly reclusive, withdrawing into isolation as he pursued his dark side research and performed rituals to extend his power even further. Imperial society developed a rigid hierarchy that placed Force-sensitive Sith at the top. Below them came the Imperial military and the ordinary citizens who served the Empire's needs. At the bottom were slaves, often aliens from various species who had been conquered or captured during the Empire's expansion into neighboring systems. The Sith themselves were divided into two main groups, each trained at academies on Dromund Kaas and later Coraban. Sith warriors focused on combat and direct confrontation, serving as battlefield commanders and champions. They relied on lightsaber mastery and physical power to destroy the Empire's enemies. Sith Inquisitors, by contrast, specialized in force abilities and political manipulation. They operated in the upper levels of Sith society, using cunning and dark-side sorcery to advance their agendas. Internal conflict was constant and expected. Sith philosophy embraced conflict as necessary for growth and improvement. Apprentices were encouraged to challenge their masters when they felt strong enough, and Sith lords constantly schemed against each other for power and position. Elimination was acceptable if the attacker proved themselves stronger than their victim. In 3681 BBY, after more than 1,300 years of preparation, the Sith Empire finally revealed itself to the galaxy. The first strike came at Coraban, the ancient Sith homeworld that the Republic had controlled since the end of the Great Hyperspace War. A massive Imperial armada of 30 battlecruisers emerged from hyperspace and attacked the small Republic force stationed above the planet. Republic defenders were caught completely unprepared for an enemy they had thought had been extinct for over a millennium. During the Battle of Coraban, a Sith Inquisitor named Vindican and his young apprentice Malgus boarded the Republic space station to confront two Jedi defenders. The Jedi Master, a Zabrak named Kao Senderek, faced both Sith in combat while his Padawan, Sital Shan, tried to escape. Derek managed to severely wound Vindican before Malgus ended the Jedi Master's life. Then, in a display of Sith ruthlessness, Malgus executed his own wounded master for being too weak to finish the fight. The young human took the title of Darth for himself and promoted his ambitions over any loyalty to his teacher. The Battle of Coraban was only the beginning of a war that would last for nearly 3 decades. As the Great Galactic War spread across the galaxy, both the Republic and the Sith Empire committed massive resources to the conflict. The first wave of Imperial attacks seized multiple star systems in the Outer Rim, destroyed the Republic's shipyards over Sluis Van, and strangled the Rimma trade route, cutting off vital supply lines. The Republic was forced onto the defensive as Imperial forces pushed deeper into Republic space. Major battles erupted on dozens of worlds. The Empire attacked Bathawi approximately 10 years into the war, but the Republic managed to repel the invasion in what became their first significant victory. At the Battle of Onderon, Darth Malgus led Imperial forces in an assault on the core world, devastating much of the planet's surface. Though Republic defenders made a heroic stand that rallied spirits across the galaxy, they could not prevent massive casualties and destruction. Malgus himself became one of the war's most prominent figures. Born under the name Veridun on an Imperial world, he had been sent to the Sith Academy on Dromund Kaas after ending the life of a Twi'lek servant in his youth. During an expedition to Geonosis before the war began, he encountered a Twi'lek slave named Elena Daru. Malgus eliminated her master and claimed her as his own, and the two fell in love despite the Sith's cultural disdain for attachments and alien species. Elena fought alongside Malgus in many of his battles, becoming his most trusted companion. However, his relationship with an alien slave was unusual among the Sith and marked him as an unorthodox figure. He respected worthy opponents regardless of their species, and believed the Empire's bias against alien species was a weakness that limited its potential. During the Battle of Alderaan, Malgus suffered severe injuries that required him to wear a permanent respirator for the rest of his life. His face was scarred, and his breathing apparatus became his most recognizable feature. Despite these wounds, he continued to fight with undiminished determination. Malgus also experienced a vision during this period, seeing the Republic and the entire galaxy consumed in flames. From that moment forward, he believed he was destined to fulfill this vision. though he did not yet know how his role in the Empire's future would unfold. After 28 years of brutal warfare, the Sith Empire had seized control of much of the Outer Rim, but they had not achieved total victory. The Republic's core worlds remained defended, and the conflict had settled into a costly stalemate. Both sides had suffered enormous casualties, and neither could achieve a decisive breakthrough. Then, unexpectedly, the Emperor extended an offer of peace to the Republic through his Dark Council. Republic officials were deeply suspicious of the sudden change in strategy, but agreed to meet on Onderon to discuss terms. However, they insisted that the Jedi Order provide comprehensive security for the negotiations. In response, the Jedi sent their most senior masters to Onderon, leaving only a small token force to defend the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. The peace negotiations were a deception. While Republic and Imperial diplomats met on Onderon in 3653 BBY, a strike force led by Darth Malgus approached Coruscant. He believed his orders were to completely destroy the Republic capital and annihilate it from orbit, gladly accepting this mission as fulfillment of his vision of galactic conquest. Malgus, Alina, and a small team of Sith infiltrated the Jedi Temple, while the bulk of the temple's defenders were away at the peace talks. Their target was Jedi Master Ven Zalo, one of the few senior Jedi who had remained on Coruscant. As the battle began, a massive Sith dropship crashed through the temple's entrance, and more Sith warriors poured into the building. The fight inside the Jedi Temple was savage and desperate. The remaining Jedi defenders fought courageously, but they were vastly outnumbered and facing some of the Empire's most powerful Sith. During the battle, Alina was injured when Master Ven Zalo used the Force to push her into a pillar. Malgus's attention was repeatedly drawn to her safety, a weakness that did not escape his notice. Finally, he engaged Ven Zalo directly and ended the Jedi Master's life in close combat. With the temple's primary defender gone, the Sith slaughtered the remaining Jedi and demolished the building. Imperial forces then began a bombardment of Coruscant from orbit, setting large portions of the capital city ablaze. However, Malgus soon learned that the orbital bombardment would not continue to its conclusion. The attack on Coruscant was not meant to destroy the Republic, but to provide leverage during the peace negotiations. With their capital occupied and under threat, Republic officials had no choice but to agree to extremely unfavorable terms. The realization that he had been used as a political pawn rather than an instrument of complete victory left Malgus bitter and disillusioned. His relationship with Alina became an additional problem, as other Sith used his attachment to her as a political weapon against him on at least 2 occasions after the sacking. During one incident, a Jedi named Aaron Lanier spared Alina's life, and Malgus felt compelled to let the Jedi escape and return. Recognizing that Alina had become his greatest weakness, Malgus made a terrible decision. To eliminate any vulnerability that enemies could exploit, he took her life. The act devastated him emotionally, but Sith philosophy taught that attachments were liabilities that must be removed. In the end, Alina's memory continued to fuel his rage and power, making him stronger than ever. Yet, the loss also deepened his growing discontent with the Sith Empire's leadership and the Emperor's mysterious strategies. With Coruscant occupied by Imperial forces and held hostage, the Republic had no leverage to resist the Empire's demands. The Treaty of Coruscant was signed under duress, forcing the Republic to cede control of several star systems and acknowledge new boundaries of Imperial dominion. The Republic also withdrew from multiple battlefields across the galaxy and abandoned several worlds that had been their allies. The Jedi Order, humiliated by the destruction of their temple, relocated their headquarters to Tython. The Republic military became the primary defense force, while the Jedi took on a diminished role. However, the Empire only held Coruscant for a few days before withdrawing, having achieved their goal of securing favorable treaty terms without the forces necessary for a prolonged occupation. The treaty officially ended the Great Galactic War, but it did not bring real peace. The Empire controlled most of the galaxy and grew ever stronger, while the Republic was left reeling from its losses. Only 7 of the 12 Dark Council members had survived the Long War, and power struggles erupted as ambitious Sith Lords competed for the 5 empty seats. The Emperor himself withdrew from public view to pursue mysterious goals, deferring control of daily operations to the Dark Council. This created a political vacuum that would have severe consequences in the years to come. For approximately 13 years, the galaxy endured what became known as the Cold War. Both the Republic and the Empire watched each other in an uneasy standoff, waiting for the moment when one false move would violate the treaty and plunge the galaxy back into open conflict. Border skirmishes erupted regularly, while proxy wars flared on various worlds. Espionage and covert operations became the primary weapons of both sides. The Mandalorians, united under Mandalore the Vindicated, blockaded the Hydian Way trade route, sparking riots on Coruscant. A smuggler named Hylo Viz developed a bold plan to break the blockade and become a hero to the Republic. On other worlds like Balmorra, resistance fighters waged guerrilla wars against Imperial occupation, while the Republic secretly provided aid despite the treaty's restrictions. During this period, the Emperor's withdrawal became more pronounced. He had developed a method of projecting his consciousness into unwitting pawns, using them as vessels to carry out his will while remaining hidden from potential threats. The Dark Council obeyed his orders while simultaneously playing their own political games. Meanwhile, the Jedi Order secretly plotted to eliminate the Emperor from the galaxy entirely. Yet the Emperor's ultimate plan went far beyond anyone's understanding, as he was working to conquer the concept of mortality itself while exploring the darkest depths of the Force in pursuit of absolute power. By 3640 BBY, open war finally resumed between the Republic and the Empire. The renewed conflict erupted across multiple fronts as both sides abandoned the pretense of peace. During this period, a Republic strike team managed to free Revan from the Maelstrom prison, where he'd been held for 300 years. The long imprisonment had shaken both his body and mind. Rather than returning to the Republic, he traveled to an ancient facility called the Foundry, where he planned to raise a droid army capable of destroying the Sith Empire. However, an Imperial strike team defeated him there, and he was presumed gone. Then, the Emperor's physical body was destroyed. The hero of Tython, a Jedi Knight who had proven themselves against the Empire, led a strike team to the Emperor's fortress, where the Sith Lord attempted to dominate their minds and turn them into his servants. One member of the strike team managed to break free from the Emperor's control and allied with Lord Scourge, the same Sith who had betrayed Revan centuries earlier. Together, they tracked the Emperor to the Dark Temple and defeated him in combat, destroying his physical form. However, an Emperor's hand confirmed that the Sith Lord had survived the encounter. His consciousness persisted as a disembodied entity, no longer bound to a physical form, but still capable of influencing events across the galaxy. The loss of the Emperor's visible presence created chaos within the Sith Empire. The Dark Council suffered multiple losses during the resumed war, and various splinter factions began competing to fill the power vacuum. Darth Malgus, who had grown increasingly convinced that the Empire's leadership was too short-sighted and conservative, saw his opportunity. For more than 3 decades, he had watched the Dark Council's infighting and the Emperor's mysterious absence. He had come to believe that the Emperor was not the leader the Sith needed to achieve their destiny. After the Emperor's body was destroyed, Malgus decided that radical change was necessary. Malgus summoned his allies to an abandoned Imperial space station and broadcast a message across the galaxy. He declared the formation of a new empire, one that would be open to all who longed for conquest and freedom from inhibition. His vision promised rule based on unity and strength through diversity, with no discrimination based on species. He positioned himself as Emperor of this new order, separate from the failing Dark Council and the absent Sith Emperor. Some among the Empire's elite sympathized with his vision, believing that change was indeed necessary. However, the timing of his rebellion could not have been worse. The divided Imperial military was severely vulnerable to Republic attack, and both the Republic and the Loyalist Sith forces prepared to strike down his new empire before it could grow strong enough to threaten them. The Battle of Ilum ended his ambitions. The self-proclaimed Emperor made his final stand on his stolen space station, where he was cornered in the throne room. During the confrontation, Malgus fell from a platform and down a reactor shaft, presumably to his end. His new empire collapsed with him. The rebellion had lasted only a matter of months in 3640 BBY, but its impact on the Sith Empire was devastating. The Civil War had shattered what remained of Imperial cohesion, and the Republic gained a considerable advantage in the renewed conflict. However, Malgus had not actually perished. Empress Asina, who later rose to power within the Empire, found him after his fall and rescued him. She rebuilt him with extensive cybernetic enhancements, but maintained tight control over him through those same modifications. Years later, in the expansion Jedi Under Siege, Malgus returned as the Emperor's Wrath, serving the Empire once again, but clearly not of his own free will. He was delivered to battle sites like cargo, rather than arriving with the dignity befitting a Sith Lord. When he expressed a desire to work with certain Imperial agents, it remained unclear whether this was genuine interest or simply following orders. The warrior who had once challenged the entire galaxy now served as a controlled weapon for the very empire he had tried to reform. Meanwhile, the disembodied Emperor continued to influence events from the shadows. Revan, who had survived his encounter at the Foundry, returned leading a cult of followers who had infiltrated both the Republic and the Empire. His goal was to force the Emperor back into a physical form that could be destroyed permanently. He created catastrophic battles between the two factions, hoping the massive loss of life would empower the Emperor enough to manifest physically. However, a coalition led by Republic spy Theron Shan and Sith Lord Lana Beniko discovered the conspiracy and defeated the cultists. The victory was short-lived, as the Emperor's incorporeal form spoke once more after years of silence, empowered by the very attempt to destroy him. The ancient Sith Lord had returned, more powerful than before. In 3637 BBY, the Emperor demonstrated the true extent of his dark purpose. He consumed all life on the planet Zeost, ending almost the entire population in a single terrible act. Both Republic and Imperial forces watched in horror as the Sith Lord drained the life force from millions of beings, repeating on a smaller scale what he had done to Nathema over 1300 years earlier. The display finally made both sides understand his ultimate goal. The Emperor did not merely want to rule the galaxy, but to consume all life within it, feeding on existence itself until he stood alone as a god of pure force energy. Darth Mar, one of the few surviving members of the original Dark Council, led a task force to hunt the Emperor beyond the known regions of space. The coalition included forces from both the Republic and the Empire, united against what they now recognized as the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. However, his ships had barely begun exploring wild space when they were attacked by an unknown enemy. Prince Arkan of the Eternal Empire captured Mar and one of his companions, bringing them before his father, Emperor Valkorion. Mar immediately recognized Valkorion as the same being who had ruled the Sith Empire and destroyed Zeost. The ancient Sith Lord had created an entire second civilization in secret, ruling the planet Zakul for centuries under a different identity. He had built the Eternal Empire with a massive automated fleet that was far more powerful than anything the Republic or Sith Empire could field. When Mar confronted him, Valkorion ended the Dark Council member's life. He then attempted to recruit Mar's companion, known as the Outlander, to his cause. However, the Outlander struck Valkorion down, apparently ending him. Arcan blamed the Outlander for his father's fate and claimed the Eternal Throne for himself. For 5 years, the Eternal Empire ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. The weakened Republic and Sith Empire were powerless against Emperor Arcan's forces and quickly submitted to invasion. Both civilizations that had fought each other for decades were conquered by this third power that neither had known existed. Hope seemed lost until the Outlander escaped from Arcan's prison and formed the Alliance, an organization built from Republic and Imperial defectors who were determined to break the Eternal Empire's grip on the galaxy. Throughout this time, Valkorion's spirit persisted, speaking with the Alliance commander's mind and attempting to guide their actions with promises of power and wisdom. The rebellion against the Eternal Empire was long and costly. When Arcan was finally deposed, his sister Vaylin took the throne. Her rule was even more brutal than her brother's, marked by bloodshed and chaos. The conflict reached its climax when Vaylin attacked the Alliance base on Odessan. After a fierce battle, the Alliance commander defeated Vaylin and traveled to Zakul to seize the Eternal Throne and the automated fleets it controlled. At this moment of triumph, Valkorion's spirit struck, attempting to possess the commander's body and return to physical form. However, the commander's will proved stronger than the ancient Sith Lord had anticipated. After approximately 1,400 years of immortality gained through the ritual that consumed an entire world, the being who had been Tenebrae, Lord Vitiate, and Emperor Valkorion was seemingly destroyed. In 3626 BBY, in the events depicted in the Echoes of Oblivion storyline, the Emperor's final remnant attempted one last resurrection. Satel Shan laid a trap with her Jedi students, allowing the Emperor to believe he could dominate all of them. His arrogance led him to attack everyone at once, drawing him deeper into the center of her trap. There, he was confronted by everyone he had wronged over the centuries. Revan was present, either as a spirit or manifestation. Vaylin, his own daughter, commanded him to kneel. Mitra Surik's spirit refused to save him. Even echoes of Kreia and Bastila Shan joined the confrontation. In the end, surrounded by the consequences of his actions, the Emperor was destroyed permanently. The knowledge of that terrible ritual he had used to consume Nathema was lost to the galaxy forever. The Alliance's influence over the galaxy proved short-lived. Without a common enemy to unite them, tensions between the Republic and Imperial factions quickly escalated. A shadowy group called the Order of Zildrog infiltrated the Alliance's systems and destroyed the bulk of its fleet. With war becoming inevitable, the Alliance commander was forced to choose a side. By 3625 BBY, during the events of the Onslaught expansion, open conflict resumed between the Republic and the Sith Empire. Imperial forces launched a strike on Ossus to destroy a hidden Jedi colony. The mission was led by Darth Malgus, who had survived his fall and been rebuilt as a servant of the Empire. Whether his apparent loyalty was genuine or merely the result of Asina's control remained unclear. The war that had begun in 3681 BBY continued, though both sides were now shadows of their former strength. What followed was a long, slow decline that would consume over 16 centuries. The Sith Empire survived the Emperor's destruction initially, continuing to wage war against the Republic through sheer momentum and institutional strength. However, the civilization had suffered catastrophic damage from which it would never fully recover. The Malgus Rebellion in 3640 BBY had fragmented Imperial unity. The 5-year conquest by the Eternal Empire had demonstrated the Sith's vulnerability and broken their sense of invincibility. Most critically, the Empire had lost the God Emperor who had ruled them for over 1,300 years. No single leader could command the absolute authority that Vitiate had held, and no amount of political maneuvering by the Dark Council could replace what his presence had provided. Over the following centuries, the centralized Sith Empire gradually dissolved. Competing Sith Lords claimed supreme authority, each insisting they were the rightful successors to the Emperor's power. Factions formed and collapsed, while ancient grudges that had been suppressed under the Emperor's rule resurfaced with terrible violence. The constant infighting weakened all sides, and the Republic, though exhausted from centuries of warfare, slowly gained the advantage. Some Sith Lords retreated to isolated strongholds on remote worlds, founding their own private kingdoms. Others went into hiding, preserving ancient teachings while waiting for an opportunity to rise again. The grand vision of a unified Sith Empire consuming the galaxy collapsed with the Emperor who had created it. By 2000 BBY, the Sith Empire had dissolved entirely. What remained were scattered clans of Sith survivors, isolated and weakened, hiding in the dark corners of the galaxy. They preserved fragments of ancient teachings in holocrons and secret archives, but they lacked the unity and strength that had once made them a galactic threat. The Emperor's domain was gone, his empire destroyed, and the scattered survivors posed no organized threat. For nearly 2,000 years, the galaxy had been fighting Sith in one form or another. The long war seemed finally over. But in the shadows, something new was taking shape. The scattered Sith clans that survived the collapse of the Emperor's domain were isolated and weak, but they were not extinct. These survivors had retreated to the galaxy's forgotten corners, preserving fragments of ancient teachings while nursing their hatred for the Jedi and the Republic. For over 16 centuries, they remained hidden, divided into distinct traditions and bloodlines that had little contact with each other. The Jedi knew some had survived, but political concerns often took priority over justice. Instead of hunting down every last remnant, the Order focused its efforts elsewhere, confident that the scattered survivors posed no real threat. A single fallen Jedi was quietly hunting down these scattered clans, and he was about to forge them into the deadliest army the galaxy had ever seen. Around 2000 BBY, a charismatic Jedi Master named Fanius left the Jedi Order. He was one of the Lost, which referred to Jedi Masters who officially renounced their positions due to disagreements with the Council. Most of the Lost left on peaceful terms to pursue different paths. However, Fanius was different, because he left to pursue prohibited teachings, and the Jedi had no idea what he was really doing. Fanius infiltrated these surviving Sith groups in complete secrecy. His philosophy was extreme, as he believed his will superseded everything, and that reality itself bent to his desires. This solipsistic worldview intensified as he studied with the Sith. Eventually, he united the scattered clans under his leadership, and took a name that hadn't been used in 2,000 years, Darth Ruusan. Darth Ruusan revived the Sith Order and recruited Jedi to his cause, convincing them to turn against their former allies. Inevitably, war with the Jedi followed. This marked the beginning of what historians would call the New Sith Wars, possibly the bloodiest and most wasteful conflict in galactic history. Some called it the War of the Fittest, while others referred to it as the betrayal, or the Curse of Caladan. Ruusan's leadership contained the seeds of its own destruction. His philosophy meant his followers were literally nothing to him, and countless Sith died for his whims. His acolytes eventually realized they meant absolutely nothing within their Dark Lord's abstract worldview. In the end, his own followers turned on him and tore him apart. Surprisingly, Ruusan's death around 2000 BBY didn't end the war, but instead unleashed it. His assassination began a 1,000-year period of chaos, betrayal, and darkness. For the next 250 years, chaos largely reigned. The Sith spent as much time fighting each other as they did battling the Jedi. Consequently, this pattern of infighting and betrayal became the defining characteristic of the new Sith Wars. The conflict spread across the galaxy, consuming world after world. Meanwhile, the Republic entered what became known as the Dragulch period. 2000 to 1000 BBY, which represented a consistent decline in Republic power. Mineral mines ran dry, and thousands of corporations went bankrupt. For the first time in millennia, the Republic's borders began shrinking as colony worlds were abandoned. Hardship bred lawlessness, and the government lost both resources and authority. In desperation, the Jedi Order took on important roles in governance, and at one point a Jedi Master briefly assumed the office of Supreme Chancellor to stabilize the Republic. While the Republic fell apart world by world, the Sith were finally learning to fight as one. The war ground on for centuries. In 1466 BBY, the Battle of Mizra saw a massive Sith army achieve victory over the Jedi. The poet Hattus immortalized the battle, describing Sith lords riding repulsor lift chariots beneath an ash-blackened sky, their lightsabers illuminating the darkness as screams of the dying filled the air. Eventually, the final 100 years became known as the Republic's Dark Age. The Republic couldn't afford to maintain its communications network, so settlements outside the core were dropped off the grid and forced to rely on slow hyperspace courier ships. The Kandorian Plague killed 2/3 of the population in some major cities. While the Republic crumbled, the Sith were growing stronger than ever and ravaged entire star systems while under the squabbling leadership of multiple Sith lords. In response, the Jedi were finally shaken out of complacency by the Galactic Crisis and raised their own champions. Jedi casualties became so common that the Order sanctioned recruiters to seek out anyone with even a hint of Force sensitivity. They were so desperate that many recruited were children, pulled into a war that had already lasted centuries. Around 1000 BBY, a Sith Lord made a decision that would either save the Sith forever or destroy them completely. A Sith Lord named Kun rose to prominence and looked at the centuries of Sith infighting to identify the fundamental problem. The Sith spent as much time fighting each other as they did fighting the Jedi. The traditional Darth title, which was used by Dark Lords to claim supremacy over other masters, had always led to betrayal and internal conflict. Because of this, Kun wanted all Sith to be equals so they could focus their resources on the Jedi instead of each other. As a result, Kun founded the Brotherhood of Darkness, an army of 20,000 Sith warriors dedicated to rule by the strong. Unlike past Sith orders, the Brotherhood proclaimed that all members were equal. There would be no Supreme Dark Lord and no competition for the top position. They would work together as brothers to destroy the Jedi. The Brotherhood was organized into a military structure with Sith Lords, officers, and regular soldiers. They established multiple academies across Sith-controlled space. Lower facilities on worlds like Hanagar and Gentis trained warriors and marauders who channeled emotions into rage. Mid-tier academies on Ryloth and Umbara trained assassins in secrecy and deception. High-tier facilities on Dathomir and Iridonia trained adepts and acolytes. The Elite Academy on Coraban, the ancestral Sith homeworld, trained only those with the potential to become Sith Lords. The road to Coruscant lay wide open, and the Republic had nothing left to stop them. The Brotherhood won battle after battle and conquered worlds rapidly. Bespin, Sullust, Tanab, Horalag, Chandrila, and Brental IV. They controlled the Bormia sector, which sat at the intersection of two of the most important hyperspace lanes serving the core worlds. The heart of the Republic was within their grasp. In response, a Jedi Master named Hoth realized the Jedi Order's strength was spread too thin. They were trying to defend the entire Republic and failing. Hoth made a radical decision: abandon defending Republic territory entirely. Instead, he would gather the Jedi into a single force with one goal, which was to destroy the Sith leadership. His strategy was to cut off the head so the body would perish. Hoth made a choice that was either the smartest move in Jedi history or their biggest mistake. Hundreds of Jedi joined him, including Masters, Knights, and Padawans. Eventually, thousands formed an entire army of Force users dedicated solely to wiping out the dark side. They didn't care about protecting Republic soldiers or territory anymore, but focused exclusively on hunting Sith Lords. The two armies clashed on a small forested planet called Ruusan. It sat on the edges of the Inner Rim, at what many considered the border between the Republic's dangerous frontier and its safe core. Ruusan became a symbol because if the Sith held it, they were advancing, but if the Jedi liberated it, they were protecting civilization. What followed was destruction on a scale the galaxy had never seen, and an entire world would become a graveyard. 7 terrible battles were fought on Ruusan over the course of 2 years. The first battle saw the Sith achieve complete victory using surprise tactics in Khan's battle meditation, which was an ancient ability that could crush enemy morale through the Force. Not a single Republic ship or soldier escaped alive. The second battle saw the Republic try to reclaim Ruusan and fail, driven back by superior Sith numbers. The third battle marked the emergence of the Army of Light. Instead of regular Republic cruisers, the Sith faced a fleet of Jedi-piloted fighters. Common Sith soldiers were no match for the Force, and the Jedi saved Ruusan. However, Khan responded by gathering the full numbers of the Brotherhood of Darkness into a single army and unleashing it on the planet's surface. The war moved from space to ground, and the devastation was terrible. 3 fleet battles scattered debris across the world, igniting wildfires that reduced much of the forest to ash and barren soil. The clash between armies of Jedi and Sith shook the planet's foundations. The power of the Force raged unchecked across battlefields like exploding stars. Towns and villages caught in the storm were wiped out. Civilians became refugees, and the once lush world became a wasteland. One student had found something terrifying in the ancient records, and he realized the Brotherhood was repeating every mistake that had killed the Sith before. The battles continued in an endless cycle, with neither side willing to admit defeat. The Army of Light outnumbered the Brotherhood 2-1, but the Jedi spread themselves thin protecting civilians, while the Sith concentrated their forces for devastating strikes. Morale on both sides collapsed, and supplies ran out. After 6 major battles spanning 2 years, nothing had been decided. The war had consumed both armies. Meanwhile, a student at the Coraban Academy was coming to a very different understanding of the dark side. His birth name was Deso, but he took the name Bane when he joined the academy. He studied the ancient texts in the archives and made a discovery that troubled him deeply. The Brotherhood of Darkness was wrong about everything. Bane found records of past Sith Lords, Naga Sato, Exar Kun, and Darth Revan. Each had been powerful, and each had assembled armies of followers that they unleashed against the Jedi. Yet each time, the Jedi had won. The Sith always fell into infighting and betrayal. The very traits that made individual Sith powerful, specifically their ambition and their hunger for power, doomed them as a whole. This was the inescapable paradox of the Sith. In Bane's view, Khan had broken the most important rule by trying to make the dark side serve equality instead of power. The strong were meant to rule, and the weak were meant to serve. Bane believed Khan had cast aside the true power of the individual and replaced it with the false glory of self-sacrifice. To Bane, Khan acted like a Jedi, seeking harmony and cooperation, and the dark side withered under those conditions. Then, Bane made another discovery. While searching for lost knowledge beyond the Outer Rim, he found the unknown world, known as Lehon, where Darth Revan and Malak had discovered the Rakata species nearly 3,000 years earlier. In an ancient Rakatan temple, Bane found a holocron. When he activated it, a figure appeared identifying itself as Darth Revan, Dark Lord of the Sith. What Revan taught him would doom the Brotherhood and create something far more dangerous. Revan's teachings surpassed the entire Academy's archives. He explained the fatal flaw that had destroyed every Sith Order. Any master who instructs more than one apprentice in the ways of the dark side is a fool, because in time, the apprentices will unite their strength and overthrow the master. It is inevitable, which is why each master must only have one student. Bane recognized that the solution wasn't equality among many Sith Lords, but rather limiting the Sith entirely. The answer was brutally simple, but it meant eliminating every Sith Lord Bane had ever known. 2 there should be, no more and no less. One to embody the power, and the other to crave it. This was the rule of 2. However, first he would have to destroy the Brotherhood of Darkness completely. Every Sith Lord on Ruusan had to perish. Bane manipulated Kun, pretending to want to join the Brotherhood while secretly engineering their destruction. He discovered an ancient ritual called the Thought Bomb in the archives and sent it to Kun as a peace offering. The Thought Bomb was a terrible weapon that required the combined will of many Sith Lords and would unleash pure destructive dark-side energy. However, it came with a devastating risk. It could kill everyone in the blast radius, trapping the spirits of Sith and Jedi alike in an eternal prison at the center of a sphere of frozen energy. Bane knew Kun's mental state was deteriorating because the endless war had driven him to the edge of madness. Eventually, Kun would use the weapon. Hoth realized there was only one way to stop the war, and it meant walking to his own death. On Ruusan, the 7th battle began. Bane manipulated events to ensure both armies would be in position. He led the Brotherhood in a ritual that burned the forest, forcing the Jedi into open ground. Then, he betrayed the Sith by ordering their fleet to engage the Jedi blockade. This allowed Jedi Master Farfalla's 300 reinforcements to break through. The certain Sith victory turned into defeat, and Kun and the surviving Dark Lords fled into caves beneath the planet's surface. Lord Hoth made the hardest decision of his life. If Kun had the Thought Bomb, he would use it, whether on Ruusan or somewhere else, possibly even on Coruscant. The only way to truly end the war was to force Kun to detonate it here, where it would destroy both armies. Hoth selected 99 other Jedi to accompany him, specifically those who had served at his side the longest and who had joined the Army of Light at the very beginning. 100 Jedi total entered the caves to face the Brotherhood. They found the Sith Lords standing in a circle with hands raised, mouths open, and eyes blank. Kun stood at the center with a black cloud of dark-side energy hovering above him. Hoth tried to reach him and make him see reason, but Kun was beyond reasoning. Then, Kun's eyes went blank. His lips twisted into a smile, and he brought his hands together. He clapped his hands together sharply, and the Thought Bomb exploded. In an instant, every living soul in the cave was snuffed out. Clothing, flesh, and bone vaporized, and even the massive stone columns turned to dust. The spirits of the dead, both Jedi and Sith, were ripped from their bodies and trapped forever in the great vacuum at the epicenter of the blast. 100 Jedi and every surviving Sith Lord of the Brotherhood perished. Their spirits remained frozen in that place for all eternity, locked in an eternal stalemate between light and dark. Lord Farfalla commanded the survivors of the Army of Light. They searched the area for any who might have escaped, but found none. As far as the Jedi knew, every Sith had died in the blast. The Brotherhood of Darkness was destroyed, and the new Sith Wars were over. The Jedi had no idea they just made the worst mistake in their Order's history. Darth Bane felt the blast from kilometers away. When it faded, he reached out with the Force to seek survivors. As he expected, he felt nothing. Khan, Kopesh, Githany, and all the Dark Lords of the Brotherhood were gone. The Sith Order had been purged exactly as he intended. Because of this, Bane began a lie that would last 1,000 years and end with the fall of everything the Jedi had built. The Jedi believed the Sith were extinct, and Bane would make sure they kept believing it. The Sith would vanish, becoming creatures of myth and legend. Hidden from the Jedi, they would seek out the lost secrets of the dark side until its full power was theirs to command. The path ahead would be long, perhaps centuries, but someday the Republic would fall, the Jedi would perish, and the galaxy would bow to a Dark Lord of the Sith. It was inevitable, according to the way of the dark side. Bane found his first apprentice shortly after, a 10-year-old child named Zannah, whose grief and rage had awakened terrible power in her. She had killed 2 Jedi with the Force. When Bane found her, she looked up at him with eyes full of hatred. He offered to teach her the ways of the dark side, and she accepted. The rule of 2 was established. For the next 1,000 years, there would be only 2 Sith at any time, one master to hold the power, and one apprentice to crave it. They would operate in complete secrecy, hiding in the shadows while the Jedi believed their ancient enemy was extinct. Each generation would pass knowledge to the next, growing stronger and more cunning. Eventually, a Sith Lord named Darth Sidious would finally achieve what 1,000 years of planning had built toward: the destruction of the Jedi Order and the fall of the Republic. The new Sith Wars ended in 1000 BBY. In their aftermath, the Republic underwent massive reforms known as the Ruusan Reformations. The calendar was reset, and the Republic military was disbanded. The Jedi Army of Light dissolved, and the Order returned to its role as peacekeepers rather than warriors. The period before the Reformations faded into history as the Old Republic, which was a dark age that later generations would struggle to understand. The galaxy entered an age of peace and prosperity that would later be remembered as the Golden Age. It would last for 1,000 years until the shadows stirred once more, and the Sith returned to claim their revenge. But none of these events would have been possible without the dark purpose of one being who consumed an entire world to achieve immortality. He ruled for 14 centuries, built empires on 2 different planets, and nearly succeeded in devouring all life in the galaxy. The child who murdered his parents became the immortal God Emperor whose ambitions nearly destroyed everything. To understand how Tenebrae transformed himself into the galaxy's most powerful and terrifying Sith Lord, watch Valkorion's complete story next.